Call to order this workshop of the Strategic Planning Priorities Update Workshop, specifically the equity plan. First thing I'd like to say, so what we're going to do is, as we go along, the board's going to ask some questions. Then when we get to citizens' input, we'll give you 3 minutes, like we always do. If you can't get it on then, maybe even give you a little over to 3, is that you can come back later, again, after everybody gets done, okay? So then if you have to come back and add anything, you can do it that way. And by midnight, we're going to call it off. I'm glad everybody's laughing. I like that. But anyway, so that's first thing. So everybody, we're clear on that. We've talked among ourselves. Okay? All right. Next, I'd like to, this has been a 2-year journey. And I think I'm going to compliment Ms. Freeman in a minute. Back in 2016, the United Church of Gainesville had a workshop for the weekend, I think it was, right, Dr. McNeely?
It was.
And Dr. McNeely attended that workshop, and it was about equity. Race to equity, they called it. And what's going on? Am I not on?
They can't hear you in the back, so.
All right. All right, we'll see if we can get this here. So, what happened then, we came back in April. I know that, I guys look at the minutes, and Paulson, that's me, commented on a race to equity recently attended by Dr. McNeely. He has done some research and feels board participation would be beneficial. Then I came back in May 3rd, 2016. Paulson noted that Dr. Roberts is following up on Paulson's previous request that the board get involved with the racial disparity program, is what's in our minutes, which was presented at the United Church of Gainesville. And then in 7/19, Dr. McNeely stated that on several occasions early in the year, she requested that the board begin a discussion on race disparities and inequities. She feels that this is a critical conversation and wanted the school board to take leadership. In addition to the discussion, Dr. McNeely wants to have something in place to take action. And Dr. Paulson commented that he too asked for the racial equity discussion and named the April 19th board meeting. He feels that the other board members also favor moving forward with this and believes the interim superintendent will lead in that direction. And Dr. McNeely stated that after making 4 requests, we should be able to expect action. She did recall Dr. Paulson's request as well and expressed appreciation for it. And then our interim superintendent, Mrs. Hollinger, went forward and started this process that brought us here to where we are here tonight. A year later, we formed the Department of Equity in August of 2017. And it's been a long journey. And then I'd like to take a second a little bit to compliment Mrs. Freeman on her work. I mean, Dr. McNeely and I both have written dissertations, and looking at this was a lot of work. And we appreciate the job you did. And it was, let me get this because I have to make sure I don't miss anybody. Ms. Freeman had Kathy Black. Where are you at, Kathy? Raise your hand back there. You helped with this, with the process with Mrs. Freeman. And then Rose. Where's Rose?
Oh, she's making copies.
Oh, she's making copies. Rose Ramos, Teresa Whitley, and Carol Norris helped out with the typing. And then there was the IDRA. Now you help me now. This is a nonprofit organization, Intercultural Development Research Association, that helped you with the writing and editing. Overview. So,
She needs to go to the mic.
right. So, okay, it's the Intercultural Developmental Research Association helped with the helped you very much with developing this process and this document we have today. So I want to make sure I said that. And all the department heads, I almost forgot them. All the department heads, thank you for helping Mrs. Freeman too. And like I said, I went through this whole thing. I spent all day on this, and it's very impressive. So it's somebody that, you know, I wrote a dissertation. I know how much work it could be. So thank you very much. So now that we've said all that, the presentation, and we bring the person in that I was just talking to, Mrs. Valerie Freeman, the Director of Equity and
Educational Equity and
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Chairman of the Board. Thank you, board members. Thank you, Superintendent. I am very appreciative that we changed this meeting to be a workshop. The reason is that this is an enormous task, and there will be areas that I am welcoming input. That I have my newest addition to the equity department, Alicia Mosley, is our new equity coach. She comes with over 20 years of experience in the classroom. She's been noted by the state for her work with Title I students and being able to have them excel in not only growth of achievement, but also proficiency levels of achievement. I'm glad to have her here with also her laptop so she can take actual notes, because we don't want this to be assumed as we review it. Please keep in mind, this is a draft. It is not a finished product. It never really should have been entitled an expectation of a finished product, because there are so many areas that bloom from this. We have an enormous achievement gap that we have to address. We have some other disparities that we have with disproportionate data with our behavior. And we have a whole transformation that's going to have to occur throughout our entire system. And from what I've learned and gained from talking to experts that have done this work successfully in other districts, is that if you go in half-heartedly and you do not take the time that you need to, you do not do the research, you do not go to the schools, you do not find out from the administrators running the school, you do not, more importantly, make sure you give the support system to your teachers that they need to go along with understanding the importance of being able to really achieve past academic success for every student, but more so where they can be successful in anything or any deciding mode of what they decide to do with their careers. And that's quite a change. We've always concentrated on getting a student graduated from high school, but the Racial Inequities Report proved to give some invaluable insight to how this is so far-reaching. This actually impacts the lives. I had students tell me that. I knew it from being an educator. But when you're an educator in the classroom, you go into your own form of thinking that I have to get a child to a certain level of achievement before I let them leave me. But when we change and do our transformation from as early as kindergarten, even as early as pre-K, we've got to put systems in place that are going to take courage, that are going to take an amount of change and acceptability of change for the sake of our students. So starting off, the district goal is to greatly narrow or eliminate the achievement gap within 10 years, 2028. There was a model that was given to me when I went to a conference in Washington, D.C. that I really would like us to adopt, that we will include in the equity plan, which is taking the achievement gap and the graduation gap for subgroups and being able to use our 2018 data as the baseline data. From that point, you take a yearly increase of a data point that we're held accountable for. So after the first year from 2018 to 2019, we should have a targeted data point of achievement for every subgroup that is right now experiencing an achievement gap. The same for our graduation. And we should have that go all the way to a 5-year point where we have a goal of 50% of a narrowing of the achievement gap and graduation gap. Then we should take an extended 5 years and have points that we can actually use as our level of measurement of success to take us to that 100% point of where we should be in 10 years. That means that every year we are held accountable for a measurability of a system within those subgroups that have not shown performance as far as moving the way that we need to move the needle with them. It is our belief that all students can meet and exceed high performance proficiency standards regardless of where they live, their family incomes, their race, their gender, their disability, or any other factors. There are inclusions in the appendices which makes the equity plan seem extremely long, but I did feel like it was important for a draft to include these different appendices of information. Because in order for the public to give us what we need, which is information that's going to ride the backs of our inner office information, that transparency needs to be there. So you'll see in the appendices things and data that I used to be able to come up with some of the conclusions that we actually have corresponding to our critical areas that I'll cover in a few minutes. All students should be provided with excellent teachers who are culturally responsive and set high expectations, a high quality learning environment, and an equitable resource to ensure that they are reaching their full potential. And when we talk about equability throughout this presentation, we have to get away from equality and everyone getting the same, because our data is showing that student needs differ. Even from when you look at our students that are in free and reduced lunch categories. There was a report that I recently received from our research and development department. I asked for them to give me a breakdown by grade, by race, by economics, for our FSA math and for our FSA reading achievement, but not only limited to that, I wanted to see our EOCs also for Algebra 1 and geometry. Consistently, throughout every single testing grade level we have, our black students are achieving at a far lower rate than our full pay African American students, meaning they do not have an indication that we use for low socioeconomics, in comparison to their white peers that are on free and reduced lunch. So we have always, as educators, gone through a very long period of time pulling out our lowest performing students and looking at them based on economics. And we have actually curtailed most of our instructional practices around that. We put in things that we certainly need to keep endorsing and having at each one of our schools to take care of needs of kids. Those needs of social emotional learning, those needs of basically having different care products at our different school sites. But the data is showing that we have to look at things that sometimes aren't the most pleasant thing to talk about. You cannot justify having white students or any subgroup of students excel at that high performing rate that are of lower economics than African American students or Hispanic students that are of full pay. We can't go in anymore saying that this is one of our barriers that we can keep using to keep us from moving forward. And one of the things that I can actually say about this belief statement is, after working and going to every school personally, delivering their actual professional development personally of culture responsive teaching, personally being able to talk to them and get the input and feedback from them, one thing I am keenly aware of is that our teachers have indicated to me that they are ready to take charge of this responsibility in meeting and making sure and ensuring the success of all students. They're ready, and they have talked about race. Our administrators have spent a whole year doing the cultural responsiveness training through a book study by Glenn Singleton with Courageous Conversations About Race. And with those things that we have, I feel very confident in saying that statement of all students should be provided with that excellent teacher that's culturally responsive and set high expectations and high quality learning environment and equitable resources. And we do have to look at those resources in an equitable way. We have sites and we have locations that need more. And we have to be able to actually have our actions formulate what our actual thought processes are, what we verbally say. My dad used to say it's putting your money where your mouth is. And we've got to start doing that. The Office of Educational Equity and Outreach was established, like Chairman Gunnar Paulson said, July of 2017. And immediately that work started to talk about developing the equity plan. But I ended up finding out that was a long and hard journey to do when I have been a teacher and administrator on various sides of town, but that's not the same as going into those environments, seeing those students matriculate on their school campus, watching and interacting with their administrative staff, so I could really find a root cause analysis of where we need to concentrate our time on and our efforts, and more importantly, our resources and our money. And that takes time. I am still in that process, because to think that we've been able to do that in a year's time where we can really effectively rise to the occasion that I know the students deserve from me, it's going to take additional time on my part and along with Alicia Mosley and other departments that have helped me do this journey. As we talk about training teachers and administrators and staff, we're going to continue that. We're going to continue, and you will see the outline of what we have planned for next year. But the conversations of ongoing data analysis, the reviewing of best practices from other districts, both in and outside of Florida, taking in recommendations from entities that have spent a lot of time and effort with trying to assist us with the closing of the achievement gap, Gainesville for All, other equity supportive community organizations. The list goes on and on. We've had outreach efforts from the University of Florida, from Santa Fe. We've had outreach efforts from the Chamber of Commerce with Ian Fletcher. We've had many persons reach out to say they want to be a part of helping and assisting us be able to meet these goals that we have established for the school board. And we can't do it alone. The community conversations and the focus group that we held this year, I'll have a little bit more to say about it, but these are pictorials of one on the left being one of our community work groups that we had, that we gained a lot of valuable input that I used as a checkoff sheet to really center in and hone in on some of the things that the community was bringing with us. But more importantly, that community conversation that you see on the left, we had those meetings twice. The first meeting was to invite one representative from every community that had kind of reached out to us or had an interest in equity work, and have them come and participate. And we did have a board member, Ms. McNeely, also, Dr. McNeely also participated, and it was an excellent way to be able to have department heads that are internal in our system be able to communicate information to community and parent participants. And it was a nice and very, very valuable session, because the feedback that I think the participants took back with them to their organizations and communities and groups, I encouraged them to share that and then bring back more feedback from perspectives from those groups. And they did that. And that information, as we wrote the original draft, I tried to include as much as I could, but if certainly I have left anything out, I am encouraging anyone here that says, wait a minute, she didn't get this, this, and this, please help us and assist my department, which is a party of two right now, to be able to include those things that we have left out, because it wasn't intentional by my means at all. I had many days of breaking down where I was thinking I was leaving something out, and had to realize that at one point in time when the superintendent came in and says, enough, you have to get it as a start point. So now we're talking about getting outside experts that I wanted an external eye. I wanted someone that was not part of this community to look from an external eye to give me some guidance on what they have done in the past with other states and other district work. And I was able to happen upon an organization that is a nonprofit called the Intercultural Research Development Association. That particular organization, along with Mr. Monty Mayer and Dr. Paula Johnson, they came in and they actually did 2 focus groups and actually did 2 PDs with our teachers that had started on our equity efforts with Glenn Singleton when he came and spoke with us. And so that's an example of a pictorial of those 2 persons actually personally presenting to some of our teachers. Both, we had one session at elementary level on one day, and then we had a secondary on the next day. Foundational statements you will find in the equity plan. Basically, the equal is not equitable, and then race must not be a predictor of success. If I can take data and I can bring persons in and I can put a cover up on the race, and I only showed them the grade level, and I showed them the actual achievement or proficiency level, and I asked them to guess whether one, if the child was white or if the child was black, and I asked them also to let me know if they thought the child was on free, reduced lunch, or full pay. And it ended up being, when I did this with almost 10 people, along with 2 family members, they end up being able to have race be a predictor, to have economics be a predictor. And if we blindfold all those other factors and we only show our outcome of our data, and persons can still disaggregate that data by those categories, then we need to really embed this equitability as far as a changing and a transformation of our system. Because that basically says that race right now is a major predictor of success. Closing the achievement gap is achievable and it's essential. Changes in our educational practices and policies must occur to eliminate racial predictability and disproportionality. I am strongly trying to include in Appendix D 2 examples of an actual equity, educational equity board policy that hopefully the board will review and then maybe have additional workshops and even put out maybe a survey for the community to be able to tell us what does equity look like for them, and us to take that input and be able to maybe have a collaborative effort of coming up with our own Alachua County Educational Equity Board policy. I want to clarify that many may say, well, you already have a board policy that talks about equity and equality. There is a difference between the state that says that you have to submit an equitable report that talks about more of the human resource as far as our demographics and our employment and our responsibility for equal employment opportunities. Then talking about what happens in a classroom and what happens at our schools and what happens in our district and educating students where all can meet the areas of success. I feel like an equity policy will actually embed into this equity plan where we all are having an obligation that we are meeting and rising to our families, that we say that we're going to ensure the success of every student. Previous efforts have been largely unsuccessful, and that's a hard pill to swallow. But I do believe that some of the things that we have extensions on in the plan, because some of them are excellent. They're excellent programs that were established by the board and by departments, but the accountability and us looking at the data and being able to track the impact of that program or that policy or that procedure and being able to not marry it, divorce it if it's not working. Let's change it. Let's do adjustments. But we have to be able to be ready for that change. And we have to be able to do that so we can make sure that those efforts that we do have, with a little bit more of a fine-tuning, maybe they can end up being with a little bit of equability in them, meeting the all. Some practices that I did notice when we did a risk analysis, I even had the outside person say that some of the things we have, there is no intent on being exclusionary. But our outcome has shown that it actually has when they had intent of it being inclusionary. And sometimes you have to actually look from an equity lens on the outside to be able to see that. The equity plan must align with the district strategy plan, and then we must have a responsibility of addressing inequities and ensuring that all students are provided with the opportunity to succeed. When we talk about achievement gap, basically I see opportunity gaps. I sometimes see where we have lack of success gaps that we don't pay really close attention to. I see where we put in barrier gaps, and we really have to be able to look and say, where are our critical issues? Well, we have academic achievement for our minority students is consistently below that of the white peers, regardless of the income. African American students are underrepresented in academically rigorous courses and programs. Now, this year, I want to remind everyone that this year, I was given the task of looking at our largest achievement gap, which is between white and black students. But every one of the strategies that you'll hear the departments cover and go over, they are all universal strategies that have been shown to keep your high excelling students high, but have your students that are underrepresented come and move up. And that is the goal of the district when we're looking at these critical issues. We want to keep that mindful set of that. Being able to have universal strategies that is able to keep the high and keep them progressing, but also have our closing of the gap, not because it's narrowing because the top is coming down, but the top stays high, and we keep those expectations high, but we keep them high and we have them applied to everybody, to every single student that we serve. Discipline for African American students is disproportionate, and that has to be addressed. We have to look and do classroom observations to see if we have some of the same behaviors that, if you go by national statistics, there have been observations that have been done in classrooms where you will have some of the same behaviors that have been done or reflected in a classroom with a white student, that when a student of color does the same behavior, it is assessed and it is given a consequence in a different manner. And we have to be able to assist teachers to be able to catch themselves, look at their own implicit bias, and make sure that they are not having that be their guide of how they actually formulate whether or not they will write a referral on a student, how we handle mentioning and talking and communicating with parents and so forth of color. And we need to be able to have that racial makeup of teachers that does not reflect the student demographics. Now on that one, I will say, we have a statewide significant problem and issue with the teacher shortage. So if we have right now teachers that are excelling with white students, then my belief is that we are in a very good situation because we have the human resources with that ability of excellence. But the teachers need help. They need help being able to be culturally aware, culturally sensitive, and more importantly, culturally responsive in a classroom, because I don't think anyone in this room can tell me that if a teacher is excellent with one subgroup, they have to be able to show that same excellence with all subgroups. Don't you think? Yes. And I think if we think about that, then the racial makeup is something that we should have as a target, but we should as Alachua County, with what we have as a human resource that maybe other counties don't, with excellent teachers that are doing excellent things with one subgroup and having them get the assistance to rise with all subgroups. There are new and expanded equity programs that we listed separately because I wanted you to have that separate list of some of the actual things that we're doing that will go in with an accountability. We will have measurable of using 2018 data, but then comparing at the end of the year, doing midpoints and end of the year assessments on if any of these are not moving in the direction that we thought they would. There hasn't been an accountability feature for everything that we are using, everything that we are doing to make sure we are using those resources, that time, that effort in the right places. Khan Academy now has a link that is going to really, I think, be a game changer. It has been a game changer for other places with the College Board, connecting with Khan Academy. Khan Academy links to College Board in a way through PSAT and SAT testing. We will end up being able to have all 8th graders this year be tested on the PSAT. Ms. Wise will go in a little bit more detail about that. But more importantly, with Khan Academy and Head Start, they have a program that's called Eureka Math. So if we can get students as early learning and Head Start, using that as an additional resource, that early exposure to that, if we're going to be using it in our K through 12, to be able to have that comfortability, and more importantly, that tracking of an individualized, personalized plan for that student. And that's what Khan Academy does. There are 2 ways to link with assessments to come up with a personalized plan. One is to use Khan Academy with their informal diagnostics that you can have your child log on to and actually do some of the activities. And it will track and see where those deficits are. And then teachers can log on there and notate where those deficits are as early as the Eureka program for early learning students. And then when we have our second linking, our second more important linking is actually linked to the PSATs. If every 8th grader takes the PSAT, then those teachers can actually now see a formulation with what you would normally see on a college entrance test, which is the SATs, that is now blended in with our FSA benchmarks and standards. So while teachers are preparing them for FSA, they also are using the diagnostics that you get from the PSATs to also link with Khan Academy to give that reinforcement that's individualized. If I have a shortage or a deficit in one area, it's going to have me do more practice in that area. The teacher will see where my deficits are. And as a teacher has their normal delivery in the classroom, that teacher can also pull out a report where there is maybe a median point or a mean point of where you have most of your classroom where that audience needs that additional assistance that sometimes you don't get until after you finish doing or presenting a lesson and everybody's exiting out the door. There will be a difference where now when you come in the door, that teacher has an idea. And more importantly, when you're on Khan Academy, the College Board has statistical information that actually shows the impact it can have on SAT scores when students start taking the SATs for college readiness. It also has a career component, so you are talking about this being our gateway to entering an area of college and career readiness. AP capstones at Eastside. The AVID program is going to be piloted this year at Mebane, Santa Fe High, Westwood, and GHS. Now, we already have the Florida grant that is through Florida Partnership that provides, through College Board, a service of testing all 8th graders at Lincoln, at Eastside, and at Howard Bishop with the PSATs. So they were already able to get that baseline data last year. There's another reason why I did not link those East Side schools to Avid this first year, because Avid just went into a contract with the Florida Partnership. So if the Florida Partnership can end up through the state, if just the principals request that they would like to have Avid assistance next year, then those schools will be able to have that resource through College Board be provided at a fundable rate through the state. I knew Alex would be happy about that. So we are not leaving those schools out, but those schools have already actively taken part and still continually taking active part. Matter of fact, those were the schools that attended the district College Board meetings during the summer, and we were able to work with those schools on coming up with a plan that would be offering and being able to exhaust all the offerings that College Board would give them under that grant, which also includes pre-AP classes that we will be able to encourage more minority students to take the pre-AP before they actually go into the AP as a building block. African American history courses at Eastside and at Lofton expanding. Infusion of culture responsive curriculum with our materials is very important, because not only do we need to show how the techniques and instructional practices need to change and be culture responsive, we also have to make sure we embed culture responsiveness in our curriculum to end up getting that engagement. The curriculum needs to be delivered, but it needs to be, more importantly, reachable, teachable, and relatable. The relatable part is what makes or break when you give a child a criteria reference test. So that's really important to be able to have that be embedded throughout. Revisions to the Code of Conduct, limiting out-of-school suspensions will be talked about later. Social and Emotional Learning Grant, expansion of dual enrollment program, where we had 16 seats last year for dual enrollment students to not ever have to leave their home campus and be able to take a dual enrollment success course to get college credit, which also helps those particular students with the acceleration rate that is calculated for each school. Last year, I gave all those 16 seats to, at the time, Hawthorne, and was very successful in being in part of the calculation for the accelerating rate. This year we have 65 seats as an increase, and those seats were distributed based on the number of seats that we had for each particular section, because we didn't want to have one section with one professor at one school and then you have to halfen it up. So we end up having an allocation where every one of our high schools received an allocation of those 65 seats for those students that showed an indication that if they're given an opportunity where transportation or adjustments in their schedule are not needed for them to get exposure to a college class in 11th or 12th grade, those are some of the criteria we use for that. And we do have a future plan to be able to expand that opportunity to be able to get more accessibility to dual enrollment courses where transportation sometimes has limited many students, especially students of color, with being able to take those courses. Community partnerships with the library. Every student this year will be able to get a public library card to check out books. Working with the Chamber of Commerce so we can start talking about what do we see as future expansions or future opportunities that we need to have through our CTE courses, and being able to communicate on what does this community need for workforce, and being able to come and parlay that with what we have as opportunities. Hopefully being able to get more involved with federal grants that involve entrepreneurship programs and so forth. These are things that we are a small district, but if we get in contact and we apply early and we get in contact with the right people, we can bring some of those innovative kind of thinking out of the box kinds of opportunities and mold them into what would fit our district. Going in with book studies. Excellence Through Equity is what we are going to be using as a book study this year by Pedro Nagara, and also doing When Treating All Kids the Same is a Real Problem by Dr. Lisa Williams. She will be coming in along with him with a speaking engagement with the reinforcement of a book study that myself and Alicia Mosley will guide administrators through to be able to make sure that they are more culture responsive and they transcend that into their campus. I also would like to extend and say that we have plans where every school will be formulated with an equity mini team at their school. That mini team will compose of teachers and also any parents and community members that would like to be a participant on that team. Once a month, we will give district training to a teacher representative that will come from that school, receive the training for the equity efforts that month, and then produce that and present it at their school sites. There are many equity plans that each school submits will also be added into this district equity plan. So their equity plan will pretty much show what their culture and climate is kind of infused with, along with how they're embedding equity, and that accountability feature comes in for each school. Programs of emphasis that we have, which is trying to get away from the magnet that you do or that we have to bring in students from maybe other sides of town. But what about taking some of those existing schools, especially on the east side of town, and infuse them with STEAM or with STEM, where everyone from kindergarten through 5th grade, they all are exposed to that. They all are part of it. So in other words, we build brilliance from what we already have in the capacity of the building. Because that brilliance is there. But we have to have programs and we have to have initiatives that doesn't say, well, you have to have this in order to participate. No, I feel the east side of town and those schools especially need to have a pilot where we actually put programs in that are thematic programs, and every student walking in and every parent that walks that kid in knows that their child will get accessibility to that specialized program, especially in STEM fields and especially in STEAM fields. Youth Empowerment Zone in East Gainesville, Harlem model. That was written by Gainesville for All, and it was something that I clip newspaper articles, I read what's been out there, and it is a future consideration because I feel like anything that comes out of the community that they want us to look at, we will explore and we will try to figure out how can we collaborate as a district to be able to assist with those, because when we do things to help the community, then we do things to help our schools. A reviewing of our zone lines, it has to be said, it has to be acknowledged, and it has to be something that we are at least able to make a recommendation from the Equity Office of looking at. Promotion of equitable admission policies for our Magnet and Academy program. Being able to possibly look at a lottery or holding seats for a certain time period for underrepresented students, and having them be able to give us time to get out and talk to parents and be able to promote that. I have a student myself that I mentor that's at Howard Bishop. She's a 7th grader last year, and I used to talk to her because her teachers would tell me how brilliant she was, but she was scared to death to enter the academy. And the main thing is, when I would go to see her for lunch, I always had to leave the lunchroom because a teacher that she loved to death used to give up her lunch every day, and let the kids just eat lunch in that room and then be able to finagle with each other and interact with each other in an informal manner. And when I asked her, I said, why do you not want to go into something that will give you that level of being able to get all of what you need to reach that level? She said something to me that I never thought about, even with my own kids. I didn't give my own kids a choice. I knew that was a way to give them that accessibility, so we didn't have conversations about it. This is where you're going, this is what you're going to do, and that's it. And when I asked her, why would you not want to do that? She said to me, because it's lonely being by yourself. I grew up being lonely by myself in advanced classes. I grew up having an experience where persons told me I didn't belong and I needed to take myself back to guidance to get me a schedule change. I remember that. I remember that loneliness. My kids used to come home and tell me about their loneliness, and my response to them was, I did it, you can do it, you'll be fine. We'll do other things where you'll be able to matriculate with all persons. And what I had to realize, even from my own perspective, was my way, or the highway, isn't everybody's way. It isn't everybody's way. But then, with teachers helping me work with her this whole year, I saw her yesterday when I was volunteering at Lake Forest because her younger sibling is there. And the mom walked in, and the first thing my mentee said to me was, I'm doing all academy full this year. And I said, oh my gosh. And she interjected and said, because Ms. Freeman, now I'm ready. And that's what this is all about. It's about making sure that once they're ready, we have policies and procedures in place for that accessibility to move them in, but with support. We can't drop and leave them. The brilliance, or the propensity for brilliance, is there, but the mentorship, the support also has to be there. And with that, I'm going to put in a plug for anyone, if you are willing to mentor any child. For Take Stock, those children are identified early on. And when those children are identified early on to take part of Take Stock, they give them a financial hope of going to school. But the last email I got in my email said that we were under by 44 mentors that we need as a whole in a district and 19 mentors for the east side of town. We need help because mentoring a student will give you more insight than anybody else around you because they're the ones we're serving and they're the ones that we have to listen to. Unfortunately, Ms. Wise has to come right behind me after I have talked to everybody to death. And believe it or not, I will be back because I got a part on the end. Ms. Wise?
That's a hard act to follow, Ms. Freeman. Good evening, Superintendent Clark, Chairman Paulson, board members. Even though I'm listed as the goal manager for some of these goals, I'm going to have tremendous support from the curriculum supervisors and content area specialists, the professional development department, all of the coaches, mentor coaches, from the research department, from Title I, project development, and all of those geniuses in the instructional technology, media, and instructional materials. And we really see our role as helping operationalize the plan that Mrs. Freeman has worked so hard on. I can tell you that the curriculum division is fully committed to this work. We will support this equity plan with all of our resources, and I'm confident that we can make a difference and close the racial achievement gap. This plan will be our compass, and we will use it as our measuring stick. And I'm an optimistic person by nature, and I really feel like we can make a difference. Goal 1 speaks specifically to raising the achievement of our Black learners in reading by at least 3 percentage points annually. And on top of all of the things that Mrs. Freeman has told you about that we're putting into place this year, we know that the most important thing are those teachers in the classroom, and we want to support administrators and teachers with professional development that's focused on equity literacy. And then once you have that professional development, the way to see change is to implement, to monitor, to provide feedback on the culturally responsive instructional practices so that you can see change. You can't just attend a workshop and automatically see change in the classroom. It's going to be a process of monitoring and offering feedback and support constantly. We know how important it is to interact with our research department and have them, with their help, provide data that's usable for our administrators, who in turn support our classroom teachers so that they can differentiate instruction, so that we can teach all students the benchmarks and standards that they're going to be held accountable for on state assessment. And for those students who need more support to get there, to help them with that expertise to differentiate the instruction. Ms. Freeman spoke to you about the teacher shortage, and more than ever we have more teachers who are new to the profession and for maybe haven't even come from teacher preparation programs. So it's on us to make sure that we support those teachers so that they can differentiate with this small group instruction at all levels. We need to create for our students individualized profiles and then personalize a plan, especially those who are not on track for promotion or graduation, but for all of our students, so that they're achieving the highest standards that they can. At a minimum, we will be doing monthly data reporting on all of our Black students who are not on track for promotion or graduation, but in many of our schools it's much more frequent than that. We also, for those students who are behind, we hear a lot of discussion about getting back in the right grade or getting back on track for graduation. And we are working very hard with schools to work on that, to have a rigorous and engaging credit retrieval program, to find pathways for students to get back in the right grade. We know that students who are retained 1 or more years, we know what the data looks like in terms of their high school graduation rate, and we need to do something about that. We're going to employ a lot of those things that Ms. Freeman talked to you, different programs, AVID, using the AP potential report that we get after our students take the PSAT to identify more and different students for rigorous coursework, because we know by exposing them to that content and putting our master teachers in front of them that they will achieve. We're going to expand the use of Algebra Nation, and I know that you heard reference to Khan Academy, to all of our students inside and outside of the classroom. And really all of you sitting out there, encourage your own children, your neighbors, whether it's in your worship, the places of worship, or an after-school activities. And whenever we can encourage our children to engage with these things outside of the classroom, it really exponentially improves the result. We have been exploring and will continue to hone the options we have for our third graders to meet state promotion requirements. It's not just, it is very important to pass the third grade ELA FSA test, but we do have other ways, and I know Dr. McNeely has worked really closely with the curriculum department in helping us find other pathways to have those students show us that they have mastered those standards, and we want to continue to do that. We also want to increase the participation of our Black students in advanced and accelerated courses and programs by at least 2 percentage points annually. We talked about identifying these students earlier and recommending them into AP, ACE, IB, dual enrollment courses, and we can do that by using that PSAT score report. We can do that with some things Ms. Kidwell is going to be talking to you about, and linking those accounts to Khan Academy so that the students are practicing those things that help them, yes, do better on the SAT, yes, do better on the FSA exams, and yes, be more successful in AP, ACE, IB coursework. We know that by exposing those students to the courses that they're going to be better prepared and more successful in college and beyond, and that's what we want. But we know that we also have to train and support our teachers in being more culturally relevant in their instruction and with their practices so they can support a more diverse student body in these classes. We also need to support our school counselors and administrators in the use of this data to help schedule students, to identify them, and build a program that's going to support their success once they're in the programs. We can't just assign them to the courses and think that our work here is done. We have to find ways to scaffold it so that they're successful. I think this is Ms. Kidwell is the gifted, she's the gifted one of the two of us, is going to talk to you a little bit about this universal screening.
Thank you, and good evening, Superintendent, Board Chair, and Board members. So it's my pleasure to talk about some ideas that we are including in the plan to increase participation of our Black students in these advanced and accelerated courses that Mrs. Wise and Mrs. Freeman talked about. One of them deals with the universal screening of our second graders for eligibility to be tested for our gifted programs. Normally, students are usually screened at the end of their kindergarten year, and we feel that universally, meaning screening all second graders, eventually in all schools, but beginning incrementally and adding on schools, will open up opportunities for students who may not have been ready to show their giftedness in traditional ways when they were in kindergarten. So this past year, we piloted 5 schools where we universally screened all second graders. We are going to add to that number by 7 to 8 more elementary schools this year, with the goal, as stated in the draft of the plan, to be universally screening all second graders in all schools by 2019 and 20. We're going to look at promotion I guess information about the gifted program to our families so that they're aware of the benefits to their children at the present time, but also far-reaching into the future and even beyond graduation. And we're going to work with school communities in discussing appropriate ways for each school that we can do this. This would not be a presentation to all parents because the gifted screenings and the gifted evaluations, those are open to students who are screened at second grade and then pass those screenings. So we would want to make sure that we're addressing selected families of students who have passed those screening measures in second grade and speak to them and give them information to help make good decisions for their students. Support for our students transitioning into gifted programs. Maybe they're transitioning in their second or third grade year as a result of some of these additional screenings. And there may be some anxiety or some trepidation on their part. They're entering into learning environments where some of the students may have been together since kindergarten or first grade. So through the EP process, the educational plan process, which is a plan that is written for all students found eligible for gifted, we can address using counselors, a mentor, maybe facilitating some peer interaction to welcome new students into the gifted communities at their schools, regardless of the age at which they enter those programs. And then supports for gifted and talented students in schools with lower numbers of gifted students. As we will see or have seen this year when we universally screen second graders, it doesn't necessarily yield a high number of second graders eligible for the gifted program. And so some of our schools have proportionately fewer number of gifted students. And so we can, in conjunction with the district staff and with those school communities, look at expanding the definition beyond gifted to include also talented. And that wouldn't necessarily rely on a standardized achievement score or standardized IQ score, but it could look beyond that to other representations or examples of talented and giftedness. So that's a process that we'd like to begin this year. And it would include looking at a definition that we would accept. There's many out there. Also screening instruments or checklists and eligibility criteria. So looking at that. Oh, Mrs. Wise, back up.
Back for more. I think we're going to call goal 3 the Mr. Charbonnet goal. This is our goal around the graduation rate. And I'm pretty sure that he doesn't sleep at all until we're at 100% graduation rate for all students. And we do have a gap in the graduation rate between our white and black students. And this goal says that we will close that gap by at least 3 percentage points annually. This is something that needs constant attention. It's not for the second semester of the junior year. In fact, we're talking to our middle schools and even elementary on how we are preparing our students to be ready for that goal of high school graduation. Around that, again, we know that our teachers and our administrators need targeted professional development and coaching around culturally responsive strategies, and then after you have that professional development, that same feedback and follow-up cycle, so that we know that we are implementing culturally responsive instructional practices. The data speaks to us using our early warning signs, using those data dashboards, putting student names and faces with each individual data point, and knowing where everyone is and what everyone needs in order to be successful is something that we have to get better at. And creating those individualized learner profiles and a personalized learning plan for our black students who aren't on track to graduate on time is going to be a big part of that. We want to create, in collaboration with the Student Services Department, a support team for students, because it isn't always credits and GPA. Sometimes it's attendance and other issues, and it's going to be a collective effort to make sure that the plan that we put in place is comprehensive enough and has the right supports so that we can close this gap. Speaking of one of those challenges,
Goal 4 addresses the out-of-school suspension rate for our black students, and this is a topic that is of a personal interest of mine since the days when I taught at Lincoln Middle School and taught disabled students and struggled to keep them in school, in class, because of behavioral issues. So I take this very seriously, and I'm very personally passionate about it. Some of the strategies that we've started to put into place and would like to expand on in this area include the implementation of social emotional, am I on the wrong page? the development and monitoring of a behavior plan at all schools. Currently, we have 33 of our schools that are trained in PBIS and are implementing with fidelity that program, though some may have just been in their first year of implementation. For the remaining schools who are not choosing PBIS, we are going to ask that they do adapt a plan of their own that has crucial elements of an effective research-based plan and submit that to us. We are going to have district staff oversight of any suspensions given to a student that are 7 days or more. Training in restorative discipline practices, and this will begin in September with all of our deans, BRTs, and one administrator from each school. We'll go through a big tub of resources that we're preparing for all schools that not only gives them research, literature on the subject, manual for implementation, and sample strategies and activities that they can use with their students, but they'll also role play those, and every month when they come back they'll be asked to share restorative practices that they have implemented and those that they would recommend for their peers to use in dealing with inappropriate behavior with students, or retraining and reteaching of appropriate behavior in their students. The reintegration for students returning from out-of-school suspension. We have this past summer provided some training in what is called the Restart Room, and that is a formal reintegration process that uses the in-school detention room as a way of students getting, I guess you would say, when they come back from out-of-school suspension, getting time to sit and meet individually with any teachers, students, counselor, administrators. They have a checklist of people they have to meet with, have personal conversations with about their actions that led to the out-of-school suspension. Perhaps it may result in a contract to get through that day or that week, but it also requires on the part of the adults, including teachers and administration, a way to welcome that student back into the school community, not as someone who's wronged them, but as another human being who has made a mistake or maybe possibly didn't understand what they needed to do instead, and it's a two-way street. It's not just the student being ready to come back, it's the classroom environment and the teacher welcoming that student back. And there's some informal models of this as well that could really just be a restorative conference in the morning when that student comes back to school, and including the parent and other key adult staff, or part or all of that day. So what we're advocating is that out-of-school suspensions are shortened to include that day when they return to school, of being in school detention, not left alone to do busy work, but to meet with key personnel in relationship building activities. Culturally responsive discipline training, and this is ongoing with the cultural responsiveness that Mrs. Freeman spoke of, with book studies for administrators and teachers. Those who are meting out disciplinary consequences sorely need that culturally responsive training as well. So they're not looking at all behavior through the same lens, that they realize that students, all of us from different environments, different ethnic backgrounds, different home lives, have different definitions of what constitutes appropriate behavior or respectful behavior, and that needs to be explored and understood before we pass judgment on whether behavior is good or bad. And then the district monitoring of schools with high levels of out-of-school suspension. I will be running a report weekly every Monday morning for the previous week, and keep Mrs. Clark in that loop as well. If there are schools that on paper look like their numbers are getting high or of concern, I would definitely reach out to that school to find out what situations happened on campus that could explain that, make sure that they're aware of alternative programs that we're offering to keep those numbers lower, and then to provide on-site support and professional development for anyone needing it from our office staff. Continuing with some of those strategies, the implementation of social emotional learning programs and training on them, and that's reference to the resources that we're going to provide to deans, BRTs, and an administrator at each school, but also other curriculum materials and intervention materials that we have purchased. All middle and high schools will receive the base curriculum this year, and that is grant funded. It is an online computerized program that can be used as a whole group by a teacher and as a preventative strategy, or we call a tier 1 strategy for behavior, to make sure that everyone's on the same page in that classroom about expectations for appropriate behavior. It can also be used in our restart rooms or our in-school detention rooms, and students can individually go through a learning module on their own that's specifically chosen to address areas of behavioral deficit that they've just experienced. So it's we're going to have training for our deans and BRTs in that as well. Development of the guide on the whole school restorative practices, and that's again reference to the toolkit that we're providing to each school that will have that literature, the evidence-based research, and the manual for implementation of those restorative practices. And again, the code of conduct language is encouraging schools to couple any more traditional type of consequence, though if those consequences are out of school suspension, to look at limiting the days out of school and pairing the consequence with a restorative practice that helps reestablish or establish for the first time in some cases positive relationships with students, with at least one adult or staff member on that campus, someone that they can feel safe and can feel that they're treated fairly by, and then expand those positive relationships to others. And then the expansion of the Alternative Learning Center to more sites with transportation provided. Currently, we have our ALC Center, which is housed at the Manning Center, and when students are suspended from school, parents can opt to bring their students to our center, and work is provided by the school site, by the students' own teachers, and then that work is completed under the supervision of a teacher, and then the work is sent back to the school. Currently parents have to bring their students to that site, so that might provide or be a barrier for some students participating. So we'd like to look if we can find room at more centrally located or west side schools, so that there are several programs available on site, so that parents can hopefully find a way to get to at least one of those opportunities or classrooms if and when their student is suspended from school, so they're not sitting home, that they're under supervision and working on actual coursework from their teacher. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Mr. Chairman, before Mr. Purvis
yes.
starts, Addison,
Yes.
Horace,
Oh.
Ty, Rodney, Reverend Smith, Dr. Wolf. I'm losing your name. I know you. Mr. Smith, all of you, their seats. I hate for you to continue to stand. Please come and have a seat. You good? Okay. Dr. Wolf, Addison.
Oh, there's 3 up, huh?
I know. It's kind of like church. No one wants to sit in the front.
We should have all scooted in.
She was talking about me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Dr. McKinley. Give him a second to sit down there.
Yes, sir.
Dr. McKinley? I think that's Ricky.
Rick, okay. Thank you for that name.
You ready?
Yes, sir. Dr. Paulson, board members, Superintendent Clark, here to talk about Goal 5 for the equity plan. And again, I'll just read the goal statement: increase the number of newly hired minority instructional staff members and administrators by 10% points annually until the number closely mirrors the county's student population by race and ethnicity. Excuse me. And how are we accomplishing that? We can read that, but relationships with historically black colleges and universities, we're going to continue our relationship and further develop those. FAMU, Bethune-Cookman, not only in-state, but out-of-state, Tuskegee, Clark University in Atlanta, also continuing to work with UF and Santa Fe and St. Leo to try to recruit and develop. You've already heard Ms. Freeman and Ms. Wise and Ms. Kidwell. Folks, we are in a teacher shortage all across the state of Florida. As a matter of fact, if you're interested in teaching, my HR team is over there. We would love to talk to you. And we want high quality individuals in front of our students, and we need you. We have job fairs. We have our career fair that we usually hold in November, and this is for non-instructional personnel. We hold a regular career fair in May. As a former principal, that is a huge event. where we recruit and try to get teachers from all over the state. We have a high needs fair that happens for our schools that are struggling, and we hold that right here in the boardroom. We are reaching people from all avenues of social media, radio, TV, billboards, cable. We're doing what we can do. We want to continue to grow. We want quality people in front of our kids, and we need that here. Also, we're using a pipeline, the Florida Foundation for Minorities. We are attending that as well. We want to, again, we are recruiting, and we want to go out and do that with fidelity. We have our Grow Your Own program. As again, I go back to a former principal because I wasn't there very long ago. The high schools are recruiting students within our schools. We want to grow our own. Our research shows that our students that are here, that know Alachua County, they're vested in our community. They want to spend that time with our students. Now, if you were like me in high school, when you tried to recruit me to teach, that was not happening. But we're out there, and we have our first group coming through graduation this year. And again, we want them to come in and be able to do that. Also, with recruiting, we started this year the new hire social. We want them to feel welcome in Alachua County Public Schools. We have a great school system. We have incredible administrators and teachers and a community, and we want to make them feel welcome as they come in. Again, as I mentioned, we're recruiting all over the state and all over the nation. Another thing about recruitment that people don't necessarily see, but it happens all the time. We are cold calling people on the application list. HR has done that this year. There's 2 or 3 that we have hired. We have called them, minorities, and focused on them and called them in and interviewed them. And next thing you know, we're calling schools and said, this person will be a great fit for you. And that is happening all the time for us. We are bringing applicants in. We screen minority applicants. We're bringing them in. We're looking at their resumes with them. We're giving them mock interviews so they can have the skills necessary to sit in front of an administrator and say, I'm a quality person, I can teach, I want to teach, and I want to do well for your students. Obviously, we continue to work with PD department, as has been mentioned already, to bring about the culturally responsive classroom instruction in schools. And one thing that speaks to my heart, and I'm going off of topic here, that graduation rate as a high school principal, that is everything. They have a chance in life if they graduate high school. And that is a big deal, and it is a big push. And if we can help that along the way from HR by getting quality minority applicants and quality applicants as a whole in front of our students, that is our job, and we will do that. Retention. So we talked about recruitment. The last part of this goal is really, you can read all the words you want, it is retention. How do we keep them in? Everybody has seen the research. Most teachers get out of this business from year 1 to 5. How do we retain them? Well, first of all, we want to support them at schools. PD's doing that. We do professional development all the time with administrators. We want to make them feel like they're a part of the community at the school. We're working on that all the time. But from the HR standpoint, the tutoring that we're offering is amazing. What I mean by that is if we have teachers in the classroom that are not yet certified, you know, the Florida Teacher Certification Exam is a challenging exam. Certification exams, in case you didn't know, the state has raised the bar on those, also how much it costs to take it. Those are challenging. So we do tutoring here. And since 2016, we've offered 4 sessions. We've had 86 enrollees. We have no limit on the number of times an applicant can come in and get tutoring for examinations and certifications. We pay for that. We pay for their stipends. We pay for their books, and we pay all the tutoring fees. Also, a little known fact is we'll also reimburse them for the certification if their principal deems that this is a critical needs area. And we got a lot of critical needs areas now, as we've already mentioned. So we're bringing them in, we're tutoring, we're trying to get them qualified and established because we want quality individuals in front of our students. And we have developed through the years with these tutoring sessions, we're in the range of serving 38 to 40% minorities in those when we bring those in. Some years it's a lot higher, some years it's a lot lower. So we are recruiting and retaining in HR, and that is our mission. And Ms. Freeman, you wish.
With the implementation phase of the equity plan, we got to do a deep dive into the data. And once we do that with administrators, we then have to actually make sure that we have adequate training in the classrooms for teachers to be able to do a deep dive in their data. We call it an equity data mining, and we've had equity data mining sessions that both Jeff Charbonnet and Adam Medusa have presented to teachers and administrators on how to actually segregate that data by race, by economics, and be able to find strategies and give helpful hints on what do you do when your data is speaking to you, as far as when you have an impact or lack of impact with your strategies that you may be implementing at your school. What are some alternatives that you can actually try to implement this year and let go of some of those things that we've always done, what we've always done, but it's not working. And then ongoing reviews and revisions. Accountability and reviewing and making sure that we are actually using the monitoring of our formative data as we go along to get to our midpoint, to use it as a checkpoint on if we are where we think we are, and if not, we need to be ready to make some additions and some deletions and some adjustments. Having our Equity Community Advisory Committee still be in place, where we had 2 meetings last year. The goal would be to meet with the Community Advisory Committee 3 times this year as we formulate where we're going to do with our year 2 and beyond. Parent focused on Equity Committee. That group, hopefully, we had 1 meeting last year. I'm hopeful that we can go to 1 to maybe 3 this upcoming year, and then actually maybe separate them by elementary and secondary so we can kind of pinpoint some of those areas of concerns that parents have. And then be able to offer still informational sessions where they are actually meeting with our department heads internally. So sometimes when you're not directly in a system, it is hard to be able to understand the why on many occasions. And so those 2 committees are able to have a forum where you can have our internal people along with our committee of community members that have a great interest and have a, I would say, a valued interest in giving us feedback on if we're going in the directions they feel, but also being able to share with them sometimes some of the state and some of the restrictions that we have that sometimes aren't transparent. And we need to be able to have that collaboration and have those discussions. And then our district equity leadership team, which when Glenn Singleton came to speak with us, he formally called it the DELT, and he suggested strongly that we have it where we meet with either the deputy superintendent or the superintendent as a leadership team once a month, so we could keep the temperature warm on where we're going, where we need to be, and actually be able to have more of a communication about our equity efforts on a more frequent basis. And then continue with having a mid-year and end-of-the-year reporting that I would present to our district advisory committee, which is the acronym of DAC, and the school board in a public presentation where the public would be invited and to be able to be an active part of that also. This equity plan represents the beginning of a long-term plan. You cannot have the number one of being number one in something that we're not proud of. Normally, when you're number one, you're happy about it. We're not happy about being number one with the lowest or the highest achievement gap in ELA. We're number one with the highest achievement gap in math. And we're number 2 when you talk about social studies, and we're back at number 1 when we talk about science. That's not easy to say, especially as a school board employee. I don't have a license to drive a bus, but after this meeting, I might end up driving a bus. I don't know. But in all honesty, the board members and district and level all personnel have had meetings, and we've talked about what this truth looks like. And every one of the persons that have been part of those meetings are ready to rise to the occasion, and they know that when we have those discussions, everything is laid out on the table. The data speaks to you, and you can't ignore it. And the district is saying through this document, we're not ignoring what our data is telling us anymore. We may not do every single type of effort in the way that maybe some persons feel you should, but I will tell you this, we will do what we need to do, and we will disband those things, and we won't stay with a pledge of we've always done it this way. That's the difference in this plan in saying we need to be held with some accountability. If you look in the plan, there's also a page that talks about the accountability, and how we will monitor and hold ourselves accountable to make sure that there is a reduction in the achievement gap across the district in all schools through a commitment of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which includes hiring a diverse workforce. The plan will be reviewed annually and updated based on the success of initiatives and student outcomes. The outcome is the key. The outcome is what we will respond to. We can have words that are said, we can have things that are done with input, but now it's about looking at the student outcome, because in the end, everything that's in this plan is for the students. It's for their success. That's what the mission is of the district. And when we have a mission statement and we see that there are discrepancies in our data that say that we're actually living up to what that mission says, then we have to make sure that we do what we need to do as a district to rise to that occasion. In conclusion, which you see written on the page of the conclusion, which is on page 21, the Alachua County, we see that all public schools that have to embrace the responsibility for academics. This is one of my favorite videos that I want to share with you.
Right, go on there. Oh, her dramatic walk to the microphone.
Hey, black child by county color. Hey, black child, do you know who you are? Who you really are? Do you know you can be where you want to be if you try to be what you can be? Hey, black child, do you know where you're going? Where you're really going? Do you know you can learn what you want to learn if you try to learn what you can learn? Hey, black child, do you know you are strong? I mean really strong? Do you know you can do what you want to do if you try to do what you can do? Hey, black child, be what you can be, learn what you must learn, do what you can do, and tomorrow your nation will be what you want it to be.
And there's a reason why I'm letting this continue, and you'll see.
No, you got this. Because you're smart. You are smart. You're not just beautiful, but you're smart.
That basically goes in to what we call self-advocacy and building it in as early as a 3-year-old. When we do culturally responsive teaching with our teachers, we talk to them about how do you take a 3-year-old. Oh, now I'm saying, no, he ain't my father, Jackie. We don't want to go there. But this is what enters our school system. This is a child that is 3. If we can cultivate this and keep it going and growing with that self-advocacy, that confidence, that adult surrounding you when you've done something and say, you're not only beautiful, but you're smart. And have it be where racial identity takes a change and we have high expectations truly for all. But nothing in this plan that is written in black and white is ever going to make a significant difference. Nothing I can say tonight will ever make a significant change if every single person that has to take a part of this plan and its implementation and its support, which are our board and our workers that are working in the school district, our community, our persons that are offered support, we all have to have a severe, non-negotiable belief that all students can reach a level of success, will in turn provide them with the education and preparation that they need. Because without preparation, you really are giving a promise of nothing. And our schools have to take responsibility for that preparation. My job is to help oversee those efforts. And we all have to take our roles, our expertise, and collaboratively work together. Because if we keep being divided on what we see as adults, some of these students that have this brilliance like we just saw here will never become all of what the potential they have to be able to become. Our voices have to be loud, but they have to be able to be collaborative. They have to work with each other. Because if you come back to this child and all the other children that we have in our system, I find it hard to believe that we can't put everything else aside and be able to make the difference. That not just having an equity plan in black and white, not just having an educational equity policy that will enforce and have consistency throughout our district on how committed we are. But more importantly, let's do everything we do. And let's get up every day we get up. And every time we open our mouths and every time we decide to advocate, keep them first. Keep all of our students first. And I am hopeful that there'll be one day, hopefully I won't be so old and I can get up here myself and still be without assistance and say we are committed to the success of every student and have data to support it. Thank you.
That's a tough act to follow. Hi, do we have discussion time for the board? Mr. Hyatt.
Well, I'm picking a very hard act to follow. But I wanted to speak to Ms. Freeman on a couple of things. First, if I were much, much, much younger, I wish I would have been a student in your class. Because you, tonight, are a master teacher. And you know, you've been on the job a little over a year, a little bit longer than, a little bit less than the superintendent on this particular job. But, you know, this is an amazing vision and an amazing amount of work. And I would like to say, just as one board member, whatever that we can do to support this department, be it personnel, be it financial, and be it whatever, let's make sure that the resources are there. I don't know if you can do what you did this year for another year. I mean, you did like 5 years' work in 1 year, maybe 10 years' work. So I just want to say that if we're going to be committed, we've got to commit to supporting the department, and I don't think there'll be any question about that. Now, I think back to what the folks in Hawthorne went through this past year, and one of the things with the community banding together, and I don't know if Mayor Cerency came up with the idea of hashtag all in, so we'll have to figure out another hashtag because that's Mayor Cerency's. But we all need to be all in, and so that's and that doesn't mean we have to agree on everything, but that means, and you summed it up at the end when you said the priority has to be the child. If that's a child, we can look at it from 180 degrees different, and it's going to work because that's the priority. And I'm glad you mentioned that at the end. So that's probably all my really good stuff at the beginning. But when you were talking about about making sure that a program is available to every child in the school, Dr. McNeely and I have an experience with that. And when we were trying, we tried 3 years. We tried for 3 years to get a fine arts program going. And we finally, and when I say we, I'm talking about a team of teachers and administration. I don't mean to give me too much credit, but it was a team effort. But there was never any discussion that program, which was quite a great program, was not going to be for the neighborhood kids. Every single child is part of that program. So so that's important to me, and I'm so glad you mentioned that. Dr. McNeely can obviously speak to herself, but I think she would agree with me on that one point. Also, let's see, I had a couple of other things. I wanted to mention with recruiting, with personnel. The facts are right now that if we hired every single minority applicant that we have, we're not going to meet the goal. And that's one thing. And I'm so, Assistant Superintendent Purvis, I mean, you're fired up, ready to go. We're gonna help you. So it's a matter of, I think maybe in addition, no, we're not instead of, but an additional goal is, I'm not gonna just get it out of thin air, but maybe an increase in a certain percentage of applications, because that's the key for us to be able to do this. Because right now, like I said, we can hire everyone, but I'm just very, very impressed. Now everybody here and everybody who's watching at home or watches on the website later, you can get this. I mean, you understand what was just presented. What might help, and I think Mr. Kaplan might help us with his story in the morning, but what also we need is maybe a one-pager of something that obviously can't be all of this, but just some bullet points that folks that maybe aren't going to read all of this can latch onto. So, but because it's important that it's digested by everybody that cares for every child in this community. So again, I just want to say thank you to the whole team, to the department heads, to the departments. This is a team. This isn't just the Equity and Outreach Department. It's everybody buying in. And so for me, I'm very proud of the folks that work in this building. I'm proud of our teachers and administrators that are going to take the challenge, and let's go get this done. Thank you.
Dr. McNeely?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To Mrs. Freeman, I can't see you, okay? And you don't have to stand, but to Mrs. Freeman.
I'll stand and take notes.
Okay, all right. And to all of the other members of your team, I have to say that finally, we have a plan that we can start with. And I don't want anyone to think that I'm trying to be negative in any manner, because I know that this document did not come easily, that you worked hard, you asked a lot of questions, you traveled, and you're still standing. And so I applaud you for that. One of the things that we need to look at, and it was so much to take in tonight, even though we had received the document via electronics, it's nothing like having the paper product. And unfortunately, I didn't print all of this, but now I can go back and make some additional notes. I do stand to say to the chair that once our community speaks, that I will like to maybe have the opportunity to come back to even, many times in our board meeting, we don't address what's been told to the board. But because this is a workshop tonight, then I think that we are in a position that we can, when citizens raise anything that they want to raise tonight. So I reserve that right to be able to come back to do that. I know that personnel will say, I'm a little biased, have a little bias when it comes to grow your own, and I'm going to speak to that first because I think it's so important. Even though we have a shortage statewide and nationwide, there is more for us to do here locally. And I've spoken with Mrs. Finley and her teammates in personnel. I don't think I've had this opportunity with the new Assistant Superintendent Purvis, but we cannot expect to just have this at a GHS. How do we get students really excited about teaching if they look at our daily teachers and what they have to go through? We've got to find a magic or a silver bullet to change the desire and change the expectation for these students. Because if I were in high school, middle school, even elementary, when we used to have career days and career fairs, I don't know if I would want to go into the career now because of what's expected and what's being done. And don't even let me start with VAM scores, but people who have kept up with that, you know what I'm speaking about. So I think we are going to have to find a reasonable measure of implementing something different for these students. Students love culinary. Students love the entrepreneurship with finance. Students love, what's one of the agricultural piece. They love the law enforcement piece. I don't care where we would go in our district with the extra activities for our students, they're there. But when you go out to GHS and take a look at that program, I just didn't see it. And so I know that we are going to be working more diligently in finding a way to increase just that piece of grow your own. If we really mean to grow our own, then we need to grow our own. We can't just have a title and say that's what we're doing. So I think that if we take a look at that program in itself, we may have some people before all of us are gone to Chestnut and William Thomas to see, I'm sorry, but to see the evidence of the piece of grow your own. I heard you say, Mrs. Freeman, that you're going to work with many teams at every school this year coming up with the equity piece in every school. That's critical and that's important. But what I want to see happen is that we involve the citizens even more so, meaning that I know we are going to infuse and implement a steering committee that will be oversight for this equity plan. I know we will have that. And so I ask that we look at that critically and not only have it, but have a process of how we can make our selection. It cannot be district only, and it cannot be just reporting to DAC. But if we are serious, then we must have a citizens group. We must put it in process immediately, and we must figure out how are we going to involve our citizens through this process. It's so, so important. I am happy to see the director tonight of Gainesville for All, because I served with that group, education group, for at least months and months. It seemed like forever. But Mr. Lawrence, we are finally here. We take the recommendation seriously that the committee who served, as you know, folk, there were several committees in that initiative, not just education, transportation, housing, law enforcement and all, et cetera. But I sat with the education group, and I think that many of the recommendations that came forth, and I see our chairman here, Dr. Houchin, we need to make sure that many of the pieces in that plan that we are trying to implement those good recommendations. We brought it to the community back at the Thelma Bolton. I can't even remember what month it was now, but I think everyone was in agreement of the fine things that all of the months, my friend right here, and I'm drawing a blank, Sue was Sue served with us, Mrs. Certain, many other people, Miss Sally Dr. Williams, all of us served on that group for so many months to compile recommendations for this board and this district. So some of the things that you have presented tonight were here, but there are many more discussions that we need to have with you about those recommendations. One of the things, go back to my notes. I love the fact that you said data speaks to you and you can't ignore that. And I hope that we truly mean that, Mrs. Freeman, because we continue to say, and ever since Friendship 7 group presented the data over at Mount Moriah Baptist Church, many of the things we already knew, but it is time out that we cannot sweep things under the carpet. We have to acknowledge what we know, working with the Accountability Office with Dr. Charbonnet and many other people who know data and can compute it. We're not going to manipulate it to try to make it be what it isn't. But we're going to have to roll up our sleeves and work very hard. I heard Mr. Hyatt say that we're unified in this commitment. And if that is truly what we mean when we say that, then every day, everything we do will be centered on our data and what is expected and the metrics and where we want to be. I kind of swallowed hard when I started the reading of the plan, and it stated within a 10-year period. And I'm hoping that we can do like we've done with our out-of-school suspension and halfen that. I don't want to, I know we would work toward that every year, but 10 years, I know with this being the University of Florida, I know with Santa Fe College being an eminent institution, all of the smart people who sit in this very room in the audience, all of the instructional people, I just cannot believe for the life of me that it will take us to that length of time. I want that lesson and how we will be practicing to do that. Do you recall, Mrs. Freeman, when the University of Florida came to our very board meeting and offered to take us through some pieces of equity, starting with the board and the administrators? And for some reason, that didn't fly that particular night. It could have been funding, it could have been many other variables, but we never went back to that. Are you saying we did?
No, I said it was.
Yes, it was the Lastinger Center. I'm not even saying go back to that. What I'm saying is that we can find brilliance, as you said, that little girl up there, at other institutions. I'm not knocking UF. I'm a true Gator. But I'm saying at that particular point that night, the Lastinger Center wanted to come in and do work with us and get us ready for what we are trying to work through right now. We must go back. It starts with the board, it starts with the administration, down into our instructional staff. What I'm saying is, I hope that we can, book studies are fine, But we need to do some actual work. And this year, I'm not going to not come to the book studies. I know there was a reason last year. We have that commitment this year that the new book study and what we will be doing, all of us need it. And so you cannot say that the board will come maybe an hour before the year is out and get we need to have the same information that our leadership and our instructional staff will be having as well. So I wanted to put that out. I have more notes, and I know other board members want to talk, but I'm still before midnight. And the chair said we could stay.
I shouldn't have said that.
You shouldn't have said it, at least to me.
We'll turn the lights over.
One of the things I want to point out, and I had this meeting this morning, I think the parent is here tonight, about when Mrs. Kidwell came up and talked about programs, especially that centered around ESE. But I found, and I said to the deputy superintendent this morning, and to Jenny Wise, and to Kevin Berry, and to Jeff Charbonnet, all who were in the meeting with me, we must do more. We have a situation where the school is so low enrolled, and the allocations that we distribute when we are making personnel decisions. We have a situation at one of our schools, and after talking to Mrs. Fissenden today, our supervisor for gifted, she said it's not just that school, Dr. McNeely, it's other schools too. But if we have a child that has been identified as gifted, I want that child to be able to have more time than 1 hour per week. I told the parent, and this child, there are 8 children in that school who have been identified as gifted. So with the equity piece, I know, and Mr. Alex Rella is probably twitching in his seat, but there is money that we are going to have to delve in. I like your word, delve. We're going to have to delve in and pull some funds out to make sure that those children will have the same service as children at a J.J. Finley or Child's or wherever. I want to see that happen. That's just an illustration, an example of what I've been dealing with today, and thinking about all that you were going to probably present tonight. This fits right in with that. And I'm not talking about equitable, but I'm talking about these children where I found out this situation need even more. So that's the piece that I'm real concerned about. I'm going to not say any more until I hear from the citizens, and I'll have a lot more to say, and I'll watch for midnight. Thank you, ma'am.
I do want everybody, Chairman, if it's okay for me to say, I am the writer of the plan, but I am just a director of equity. So when there are things that we would like to see done, some of those things that have been attributed to me being able to do on my own, I don't have the power to do that. But I will, and I invite any directives that I get that are going to be able to give me that needed ability to do so, to have those things be considered.
And I get that, Mrs. Freeman, and I understand that. I was directing it to you tonight. I know quite well where it goes to the person to my right. I understand that.
I wasn't saying that.
No, I understand, but for the public to know, because I respect you wholeheartedly, I was saying what I think that we need to be doing. But I know it's Mrs. Clark. In fact, I said to the committee today, Mrs. Clark, get ready. I said, with all of the help, did I not, Mrs. Jones? All of the help that we will do for our students this year. However, if we don't close the gap, if we don't make improvements from where we were 2016 to 17, 17 to 18, and now we're in 18, 19, guess what? It's coming back on this leader. I don't care who's working. I'm sorry, Miss Clark. It's the truth. You are the leader, and it comes back to her and to us as board members. It's easy for the citizens to say, we need a change, and McNeely, you're the first one on the cutting block, goodbye. But for Mrs. Clark, it's even more pressure because she carries this district. With all of us who must help her, she still is the one on the hot seat. She knows that. I tell her all the time. And so I'm just saying that we have to be very cautious about what we want and how we relay that to the superintendent of schools. I have no problem in saying what I need, what I want. She gives me the look like she's giving me now, and it's okay. It's all right. We care about Mrs. Clark, but we know what she has on her shoulders. And so it's not easy. I thought she would be gone to the state meeting tomorrow to address all of the things that we need for her to address, and it was canceled. So sometimes the state plays with us, do they not? And so she was prepared to go to address some issues having to do with our couple schools, and she's not going to have that opportunity. So even though she is the leader, we do expect great things, and she will delve back into helping you, Mrs. Freeman, and all of the other staff members that need that. I see a lot of bus drivers here tonight. I know that they are a lot of employees in transportation, not just drivers, but I'm sure, even though we didn't talk about that, when citizen input comes up, because there's equity there as well, you need to speak. I give you that permission. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mrs. Roy.
Thank you, Dr. Paulson. I also want to add my congratulations to Mrs. Freeman and her team. You have thought of so many things. You've looked at it from so many different angles, and I appreciate that, you know. One thing I wanted to especially say that I love the idea of is that we are going to be using more restorative justice practices instead of traditional punishment to show our students a different side of why we're asking them to behave differently, and to show them how they can improve and not just have this be a revolving door of suspension after suspension after suspension. And also the re-entry team is a wonderful idea where you talk to the student when they come back from a suspension and welcome them back to the school, tell them they are valued and that we want to work with them and to correct any misbehavior that there was or problems there were in the classroom. One thing you said, Mrs. Freeman, that is so very important is that we cannot do this alone. We cannot do this alone. We need the community's support. And you mentioned wanting to get mentors. And I know everyone in this room cares deeply about our students and about the inequity in our system. And the one thing that you could do, and I'm challenging people in the audience, is to be a mentor to one child and emphasize the expectations that you as an individual, an educated individual, have for that child, because that child may not get that individual attention enough to make a difference. And if they have one person meeting with them and showing them they care enough to come once a week and ask them how things are going. I know there are groups that are involved, and I heard about the, for example, the Lincoln high school alumni offering to mentor the students at Lincoln who very much need it, very much. So I'm hoping that maybe we could get groups, whether it's a church group or a social organization that would adopt a school to, want to, everyone take a child and, be a friend to that child and an example. Just to emphasize what Mrs. Freeman said about we need you, we need everyone to help us achieve these goals, these very, very ambitious and worthy goals. Thank you so much.
You want to go again? Hey, Ms. Griffin?
I just want to say thank you also. I know a lot of work was put into this, and you had the department chairs of all of our departments get up and say that they are very excited and encouraged by this plan. And at the beginning of it, it says that the equity plan must be living, breathing document that is reviewed and revised on a regular basis. The needs of our students change. So I agree that it needs to be something that we look at. And at the end, you say that we cannot do it alone and we don't work in isolation. That we need the community support and we need the community to not only support us, but to believe in the work that we're doing. And I like what you said, that if everybody, and I've said this for years now, if everybody that comes into our schools and everybody that works in the district and all the way up to the superintendent truly believe that the students can and are successful, we can make a difference. And I thank you for stating that. I think that it's not just a plan, it's the people that are going to be doing this work that really need to believe in the work that we're doing. Because if that happens, we can make a change across the district, not only in our schools, but in the community, and for a positive outcome for everybody. So I thank you for the work, and I agree and I support you wholeheartedly.
Mr. Hyatt?
I had one more thing to add, and Ms. Wise touched on this, but I wanted to underscore that we're not going to leave our teachers without support here. We're going to give them we're going to back them up. We're going to give them the training. We're going to give them the encouragement, because they're on the front line. So it's not, we can't just say, okay, go do this. We've got to have their backs. We've got to support them. We've got to lift them up, and they need to know that we as a team are counting on them, but we're going to give them the tools and the training and the support they need. So I know Ms. Wise said that, but I just wanted to say from the dais, that's important to all of us. Thank you.
All right. Wow. I'm not going to be too long. I think, Ms. Freeman, you gave us a lot more than you even showed everybody tonight. Some of the things I thought were really valuable. Parent and community feedback from the groups you had. That was, I took time to read that. That was very helpful. Something that's really going to help us going forward. Help us as board members. You get a chance to, Dr. McNeil, you get a chance to read that, read it, okay? So that's important. The CTEs, you had 11 career technical programs, and it was broken up by how many African American and white. And in those 9 of those, I think you had almost 40% participation if you just took those 9 programs out of our minorities. But the ones that we really didn't have was agriculture. I heard somebody mention about the agriculture. And I think the entrepreneurship at Buell's. But that's really very helpful. We get that for all of them. So thank you for that. The graduation rates, one thing I'd just like you to look into is what are we going to do for these students that never came to our school district and came from out of county? That's a problem we have right now. That I don't know how we're going to address that problem. And that's in our overall graduation rates calculations. It's not the same as if you just look at the schools we have. And then I was gonna use that last sentence, and Mrs. Griffin had to use it. Thanks a lot. It is, it says it all. Alachua County Public Schools Equity Plan must be a living, breathing document. It must be reviewed and revised on a regular basis to ensure it's meeting the needs of the students it is designed to support. This is a start. And I'm gonna tell you once again, this is, no wonder you look tired. Remember I came up to you and asked you how you were doing? My Lord, lady, this is unbelievable. All work you put into it, you should really be congratulated. I am so proud to have somebody like you working for us.
Thank you.
And I'm so proud of the rest of you that presented tonight too. This was a tremendous presentation. Now, we're gonna go to citizens input? Or did we have, what did I do? One, is that all?
Well,
I know, just
one
kidding.
that turned
Was
out.
there a list?
Huh?
Was there a list for citizen input?
Well, we have somebody first, Colin, bro. If you wanna go first.
Oh, he conceded the floor.
Right? What a gentleman.
I want to start by saying I'm very uncomfortable projecting this way because what I'd like to do is speak to the room. Okay, because this is supposed to be a
We try to
community
record,
forum
Ms.
about
Houghton,
equity.
let us ask, can we get her, we try to record you here, that's why.
Okay. I want to say that, I'm sorry, did you ask me to?
Say who you are.
Sure.
That's why we want.
Did you say I could turn it around? Let's try here. Is this okay? Okay. I'm Deidre Houghton, Dr. Deidre Houghton. I'm a postdoctoral associate at the Center for the Study of Race and Race Relations at the University of Florida. I was the chair of the Gainesville for All Equity Education Group for Phase 2. Julian Kinsey was the chair for Phase 1. I want to appreciate his work. I'm hyped, very, very hyped and very excited to be able to address everybody. I have a number of things I'd like to say.
Ms. Houghton, real quick though, we have 3 minutes, you can come back.
See, that's the
Another chance after everybody
Okay.
gets their chance, okay?
Here's the thing. It's nearly 8 o'clock. I'm a single parent. I'm going home to a 13-year-old boy who goes to Westwood. 10 people have spent an hour and a half talking about equity. Is that equitable? The rest of us have 3 minutes each. This is the first district-sponsored conversation on equity. So I want to applaud that's incredible, and this is a landmark moment for the district to have its first conversation on equity. To have it this way on a Tuesday night where parents like me, who's a parent to a black child, is giving up my time for a board meeting that was not even widely shared, it's not equitable. It's absolutely not equitable. The people who we want to talk to, they are not in this room. And the fact that I'm having to make my comments to literally a dais of people who are seated above me is not equitable. We spent an entire year talking about equity through Gainesville for All. And it was hard. It was hard work. And every time we did it, Julian or I spoke for maybe 2 minutes at the minute and broke people into groups. There are structures you can use to have a large group of people speak equitably and dialogue about an issue. Providing a forum where you are about to vote on a plan that at some upcoming meeting that impacts this entire community and only providing us each 3 minutes to speak individually and not build collective power is not equitable. And it's not a wise process. Okay? That's the first thing I want to say. The second thing is I'm concerned about this first recommendation that Gainesville for All made. We said, begin with SBAC issuing a public statement on a 3 to 5 year equity and excellence initiative. There are 3 people who've conceded their time. May I use it? Thank you. And those who've said that, I really appreciate that. That's very kind of you. And appoint an independent oversight committee comprised of community-nominated, diverse constituents who act as leaders, ambassadors, liaisons, and guide for the Alachua Countywide Initiative. This committee should have oversight of the equity plan, process, proposals, and recommendations. Our suggestion was to create a committee, study equity for a year, bring together a full report that says, here is how we are spending our money in the district, which is not included in this report at all. Here is all of the data, disaggregated data on all the benchmarks. Here are specific focus groups we've done with affinity groups. Let me tell you what that term means. That means we get a group of only Black parents together. And we have an independent person, because if the district is asking questions, the answers are going to be a little bit different than it would be, and that's what research tells us. So you get an independent person to do affinity focus groups with Black parents, with Latino parents, with Asian parents, with white parents, with Black students, etc., with LGBTQ parents, with LGBTQ students. All that information gets collated, discussed by this group, disseminated to this entire community of Gainesville, Florida, before we create a plan. I'm not sure how many people in this room could define equity right now. And a definition has not been put forth tonight for what equity is. Until we get the community at large, the higher education community, everyone who needs to be at the table, understanding what these issues are and participating in a discussion for them, I want to tell you something. I don't care what strategies you put up on this board, it's not going to happen. Because we're the ones who are going to make it happen. And it's possible. It's absolutely possible to have a full initiative that's equity and excellence, mobilize all of Gainesville behind this, not just close the gap, but become the flagship county for this state. Okay, that's possible. The first thing that equity is to ask is who is not at the table. When I look around this room tonight, there's a lot of people not at this table, okay? So until we get some kind of venue by which we've done an open call to get those people at the table, I am not prepared for us to move forward with a plan. I do believe we can do some goals, we can keep doing strategies, but we're not ready for a plan as a community. And I want to just stop for a second and say, where's Mrs. Freeman? Mrs. Freeman, your office and you have done an outstanding job. 2 people doing the work of an entire community. Okay? That's not how this is supposed to happen. And that was not the plan when we, meaning Gainesville for All and the Education Task Force, brought 2 words to Gainesville. The first was equity, and the second was culturally responsive pedagogy. When we brought those 2 words into this community, which we did, and into this discussion, we did so with the hope that the board would take up equity as a board-driven initiative under the leadership of the superintendent and devise the plan for the entire county to move forward, not to just make it the work of one office. That's not effective. Although what you've done is phenomenal, and we can build on that. And I still am in belief that we need an independent steering oversight committee. We need a wider process to hear what people have to say. How are people experiencing school?
Ms. Hodgins,
Certainly. I'm almost finished. The last thing I want to say is that I sat over there and grimaced every time I heard the word minority. That's not a culturally competent word. It's not a culturally responsive word, okay, for the 21st century. The term we use now when speaking about teachers of color are just that. We use the term teachers of color. I just attended a national convening with 30 organizations, all minority-serving institutions, who would be happy to work with this district. However, the information didn't get out. There's no committee. There's that, one, so that's why we need a committee, because lots of us have our tentacles in different areas. The second is with regard to Take Stock. I had no idea Take Stock was under-enrolled. I bet if you would have gotten that word out to 20 people in this room, you'd have had 60 mentors in less than 2 days. But right now, the board, the district is not working publicly.
we have other people.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you listening.
My name is Wendell Williams, and I'm here as a concerned father. I have a gifted student at Metcalf, and as Dr. McNeely was talking, she has 1 hour, 1 day per week, and she was tested under the top 2% in the nation for intelligence. Also, in the year of 2016-2017, her gifted teacher went on maternity leave in December, and they didn't have a gifted teacher there until 4 months later. This is, I think, strongly minimizing our gifted black students. You're neutralizing them because they don't have the resources that the other kids have. All I'm asking is someone to figure out some type of idea. If you have to bus them, anything we can do to just allow our kids to have a proper opportunity like the other kids have. That's it.
Anybody else? We'll make it to midnight.
Khalid Blount. I fully agree with Dr. Houchin about needing to involve the entire community deeply. I've been pushing for years about changes to the school, to the curriculum, and I have, okay, I said I have been pushing for years about changes to the schools, to the curriculum, and gotten minimal feedback. I will express gratitude that recently I did a Black History presentation and 2 board members did show up. But in my exchanges in the recent past with school system staff, I've gotten really hollow feedback, hollow return on the efforts. Even some members, some staff first saying that they would try to familiarize themselves with the history and then turn around and say, oh, I didn't really say that. So I think it's important that we think about the restoration of the agency of black people and black communities. Captive Africans were brought to this country for an economic reason, and that economic reason involves stripping away personhood and identity and history, and all that has to be restored. What we are talking about here is a sea change in the culture of this entire region, perhaps of this nation. To quote Nina Simone, slavery was never abolished from the thinking of America. So we need to find a way to a different attitude towards the value, the personhood, the agency of black people, starting with black children as far as the school system is concerned. Realizing that they have full value and full potential that any children have. I would urge every board member, there are online batteries of tests and inventories of implicit bias. How many board members have actually tested themselves? And how many have urged that all your administrators and all your staff take these tests and check themselves? Okay, that needs to happen across the board. And I'm not just the school system. Law enforcement, criminal justice systems, all. People need to check themselves for how they are really relating to the society we have. You know, racial issues almost shattered this country once. The Declaration of Independence of this country was edited to remove criticism of slavery. And if we cannot vindicate the problems of the past, they continue to color every institution and policy system in this country.
Hello. Hi, my name is Sunshine Moss. I am an educator in this community and have been for the past 16 years. I've had the pleasure of working with children, families, interns, teachers in a variety of capacities. I'm currently a doctoral student at the University of Florida. I work under Holly Lane in the UF Literacy Initiative. And I've spent the bulk of my career working with disenfranchised children and parents. And in 2009, I left the school, I had a son, and I went into private practice. And in that time in private practice, I learned a lot. Number one was that I didn't know enough about how to teach kids. Number two was the only people who could afford to walk through my door were white middle-class parents. And they did it at a great sacrifice to themselves. Some of them are here tonight. They leveraged their homes, they sold their cars, they waited on dreams of theirs so that they could meet the needs of their children. And if it took that for them to meet their children's needs, then I know what it took for every other family who was in my zone school before I went into private practice. I lived, I had an office over here off 6th Street, and there was a fence, and behind my office building was Section 8 housing, and I would hear the children laughing and playing and know that not one of them, not one, would be able to afford me. And so I went back to school because I wanted to be in a position, one, to make change, and two, so that they would be able to afford me, and that the cost of having an educator who knew what to do and knew how to work with children and families would fall on their shoulders and not on the shoulders of white middle class families, not on the shoulders of anybody, because we have a school system of brilliant educators, but together we're not solving the problem, because this issue, while we're now the largest racial achievement gap in the state, there's been a huge racial achievement gap since I got here, and a financial gap. And so working at Williams, we had a leak in our library, and instead there were things built at Talbot. And I was like, I knew we were going to get that money. We had a leak in our library. And then there were extra things added to schools on the west side of town, and it was so hard for me to believe that people would do that intentionally. And I don't want to believe that. But I think that's part of our own filter that we need to look at, that why are those things happening? And that's why looking at where the money goes, we can look at our track record. And you guys have been here a while. I've voted for many of you, and I'm glad for you to be here. But you can look at the track record of where you've spent money, and it says where that implicit bias is. That is the test. And so recently with the movement about women being objectified, there was somebody said, we'll know that things have changed not when policies change, but when someone is so uncomfortable saying something about women in a room that it just stops. And in Alachua County, when I became a teacher in 2004, I heard the same thing that I continue to hear today, and it's about those parents those parents. I've heard it from teachers, I've heard it from administrators, I've heard it from secretaries, and I've started hearing it from my interns. And when they leave our school, they know right from wrong, and then they go into the classroom and they see families who are struggling, and they blame it on them. But I've been here long enough that those parents were my students. Those parents were my students, and when we have a plan for children, and I thank you for the work that you've done, because this is the biggest movement that I have seen in my entire career here in Alachua County, and it did not come without sacrifice. Yeah, I will wrap it up. But this is the thing, if we talk about every child succeeding, children are situated within families. And when it becomes so uncomfortable to put the head on families, when families become a part of this plan, whenever resources go into our community, then we'll know that we're really working towards equity. And I thank you for your work here, and I thank you for allowing Deidre to have the time that she did. And I know it was an inconvenience to you, but it made a difference to the parents in this room. So thank you.
Mr. Chair, Armando Grundy. Mr. Chair, the one thing that I'm concerned about is you talk about an equity plan, and it seems like a plan has been a dream, and we've had plans and plans after plans, and next year we have another plan, and plans seem to become dreams deferred. And you know, the one thing I'm concerned about is when we look at the numbers, Mr. Chair, the numbers are the numbers are the numbers. And I think like a month ago, you all sat up here and gave yourselves attaboys, or some of you commended the superintendent about the numbers of the achievement gap being closed for students of color that look like me. And you said that was a great thing because you increased it 12%. But what you didn't talk about was the amount of students that came out and are going to other schools that are no longer being counted. You didn't count those. It's kind of like the people that Donald Trump takes credit for when he says the unemployment gap is so low, and he takes credit for it. Those folks are no longer on the unemployment rolls and they're not being counted. So we're not 3/5 of a person, we're a whole person. But I want to look at when do we matter, because I've said Alachua County has an allergy to hiring African American and brown teachers. That's an allergy. You have an allergy when it comes to young black men. You have an allergy. And it's not the first time, and Ms. Clark and I have had a conversation. Let's talk about some more numbers. I got all kinds of numbers in my head, like the number 129. The number 129 at Lincoln Middle School symbolizes the number of Caucasian children in your Lyceum program. The number 164, the number of Asian children that are in there. The number 12 of African American children. Are you meaning to tell me there's only 12 African American children that are smart enough to go into that program? I beg to differ. Are you telling me we're only smart enough to throw a football or dribble a basketball? So you want to partner with the city of Gainesville and pat yourselves on the back because you've given $400,000 to people to dribble a basketball because that's all you think black children can do. We come from a rich culture. We were a people that were proud. We used to value education at one time. But you want to talk about the numbers of where we can only read. We only read 10 to 12 minutes. And I understand that number. There's some things that we have to own. But there's some things that you have to own. When it comes to hiring black and brown teachers, you're in control of that. It's a shame when we don't have to go but 64 miles down the road to Marion County. They don't have an allergy. Matter of fact, when you go to all kind of career fairs, you see Marion County School Board hiring. And they hire black and brown teachers. You all seem to have an allergy. I don't know what it takes. It's Benadryl, Robitussin. But I don't ever see Alachua County recruiting. I don't see them at FAMU, which I'll be going to for grad school. And, you know, the other thing is when it comes to young black men, I'm a young black man. And I had a second grade teacher, and I want to put this into it because you all are in academia. I had a second grade teacher tell my mother the only thing that I would ever come up to would be a drug dealer and a criminal. And I am none of those things. I am none of those things. So, Mr. Chair, I understand it's uncomfortable. I get it. But the control here, this is not an equity plan, it's an equity dream deferred. And to sit here and say that you all have made an accomplishment is further from the truth. I think we need to go back to the drawing board because the Gainesville for All, I get it, we've had all the plans. I know it's uncomfortable, Mr. Chair. I
It's
get
not
it.
uncomfortable, it's just keep it going on. Same thing we talked about last week. Go ahead.
Well, you obviously didn't get it the last meeting.
I'm listening.
I'm not Shanae. I'm not going to be bullied, Mr. Chair. So, so the point is, Mr. Chair, we all need to do a better job of bringing our community together in a more meaningful and effective way. And I don't think by just having plans. I think it comes by having dialogue. And maybe it will come at the ballot box too. Thank you.
My name is Shalonda Brown, and this is actually my second time in the board meetings. I knew something about it because I'm part of the committee with Ms. Freeman, but I'm here to state that yes, I'm kind of biased between paras and stuff. I mean, I keep hearing everybody teacher, teacher, teacher. We also need to train the paras. The paras are someone that takes our kids by the hand each and every day and work just as hard as that teacher do. And when I state that, I state it from being at a school every day. My kid is now attending Rollins, and he need a one-on-one para. But the para that they assigned them, it's only like the second or third day of school, and I just award her for the things that she is doing for my kid. It seems sometimes as though they're going out their way to do things for our kids and no one is appreciated, or I shouldn't say that, acknowledged of it. So what I'm saying tonight is, when you're thinking about training a teacher, also bring that para in, or those paras in, and train them as well. They're not saying that they don't want their job, they need their job. And this is what everybody it's just real bad, because it just doesn't seem like, oh, they're important enough. They're very important. The next thing I would like to talk about is time. No one never knows when these meetings take place sometimes. Me as a parent, I just happen to be part of the committee. I knew it was happening, and that's why I'm here. Other times it might be where I have to miss something, and the information is not out there. We need to learn how to put information all at the schools, get it out on Facebook, FaceTime, whatever, it comes to that. And then the last but not least thing I want to bring to the district and everyone else that's in this room is to it's a very touching subject. Sometimes I feel like I was singled out because I am black. Sometimes I feel like my son is singled out because he is black. I don't know anything about these programs or these fundings or these grants that might be available to not just my kid, but any of the kids in the community. It's not enough information out there, and we need to get this information out, whatever it is, because Rollins, if you pass they playground, he can't play on that playground. It's not accessible for him to play there. Not only just my kid I'm speaking of any other kid that has a handicap or has a delay, and it's real sad that I don't even know which way to go with it. Who do I contact about different things? I just think that, we also need to educate our school counselors and all the staff, all the faculties that's there, what's available to us and our kids. Thank you.
Annie Pearl Curtis, good evening. Usually when I step to a mic, I be singing. That's what I do. Transportation bus drivers, would you all stand? I'm here representing the bus drivers. And I really, seriously, when I was over there, I was thinking in my mind, I need you, you need me. There's a song that we sing. We're all a part of God's body. Stand with me and agree with me. We can't do it if we got all these other things up in our minds. Transportation Department, we're here tonight because I'm upset. You all forget about us. I asked the Lord, why in the world you want me to come out of retirement? They gave me their little 3 minutes. I said, because I'm too old for this. Then they sent me to 3, 4, 5, 6 routes because I knew the area. Then they sent me in I get emotional because I know the progress that has happened. They sent me in a place out on 20th. Linton Oaks. Lord Jesus, them children that made me lose my religion. I went home praying. I said, I know good and well, Lord, this ain't what you set me over here for. Because I started to go back home. You've forgotten about transportation. Please, and when you do body language and stuff, I read people. I don't miss nothing. I'm nosy like that. I was a union rep for 23 years. There ain't much good by me. Those children out there see me first in the morning and last in the afternoon. When I got on that bus, I had to put my dukes up. They cursed me out and everything. I had to threaten a few of them and everything. The gang leader came to me and told me, you don't know who I am. I said, okay, you don't know me either. But we are being mistreated out there at transportation. And I need for more than Miss Neely and Gunner to come out there. I know you can't come all the time, Karen. I don't expect you to do. That's why you have these other folks. But I pay my taxes every year. And my taxes help pay you and me. And we're being mistreated there. There's a lot going on at transportation that you all don't know about. And you think we're at the bottom of the totem pole because we're just bus drivers. Please don't play on my intellect. I'm driving a bus because that's what I chose to do. I came from Nationwide and Claims, making out them folks checks, giving them their money. There was nothing wrong with my brain, and they don't play on that. And then we sit there and we be fussed at and we got to do this. I got up at 5 o'clock this morning. I'm taking their time. And I left my house at 5:45. I picked up my first child at 6:30. I'm the first person they see. Since I've been on that route out there at Linton Oaks, praying with those kids and talking to those children, they found out somebody cared about them other than the teachers. Don't you stop, baby. I knew your daddy, don't you stop. Don't you stop. Let me hear you. Don't you stop. All of you have good points. But don't forget us now. Because there's some stuff going on out there that you need to know about. I'm not afraid to tell you what's happening. I'm not a throw your rock, hide my hand person. I'm getting sick and tired of it. I'm thinking about going back home. But I know them children need me. They need me. I got them praying before they get off the bus in the morning. And they reminded me that, Miss Pearl, we didn't pray this morning. Them bad children that they don't forgot about. I said, Lord, you got to give me strength to stay here. Then they took me from a route, then they got me going way to Newberry, and I live in Archer. I said, wait a minute, now the bus was at Archer. But the Bible tells me I have to obey the ones that take charge of me. So I'm going to pray about this thing. That bus going to go back to Archer, or you're going to lose some good drivers. Because I believe if I leave, a few more going to leave with me. And guess what? Y'all ain't going to drive them buses. With 72 children behind me this morning, overloaded. Overloaded on the bus without air conditioning. This morning, second day of school. Please, please, don't just open your mouth and say stuff. Do it. I don't care if you don't like me. That don't bother me. That's one of my babies over there, Purvis. I'm about to cry, boy. You just don't know. That's one of my... I asked him to let me come into the school to help with the detention place. He told me I wouldn't pass the psychological test. But we need help. We need help or we're going to lose good drivers. Confidentiality, partiality, favoritism, all this stuff. You gave us a new director. I ain't quite sure what I think about him yet. I'm serious. I ain't quite sure. Because you can make your mouth say anything. Actions speak louder than words. That's what my daddy told me. So we need y'all help. Gunner. A lesson coming up. Don't play with me. We need your help. I'm serious. Not just you, Miss Mc. That woman there. I know she's tired of me calling her. But we need your help because there's some stuff happening there that you all need to come.
I'll give you help.
Yes, sir. I ain't talking about before. I'm talking about what's happening right now.
I'll do it again.
Okay. All right.
I gotta get some more people up there to talk.
Yes. How you doing?
I'm going to be very quick.
Ms. Vincent,
And I'm Mary Vincent.
Talking the mic, Ms. Vincent.
Mary Vincent from Transportation. And I also would like to just applaud the young lady right here. I don't really know her that well, but I listened to her plan. And the plan requires a village. I want you to keep that thought. It requires a village. It cannot be one-sided. The same way Alachua County School Board requires a village. And it means from the top to the bottom. All of us are important. And all of us have our place on this tree. There's all kind of branches, but it's one tree. And we need to come together with this. Now in transportation, I want to just say for us that yes, there is issues, and you all very well know some of them. But the thing is, we are also a part of this plan. And we will always be a part of this plan. Really truly, we're the opening of this plan. Because when they step on that bus out of their home, we are who they see. So we open up this plan. And at the end of the day, we close this plan, as Ms. Curtis said. Don't think that because I'm not here or here, that I'm not important. The young girl with the parrots, I applaud her as well. Because a lot of times I shouldn't say we're forgotten, but sometimes you do feel unappreciative. But you got to know who you are, because you may not get the appreciation that you think you deserve or you think you need. So always know who you are. Always pat yourself on the back, because sometimes that's all you have. So I want us to go forth with where we are with transportation. Now, we're supporting the unit, but also we are those parents that have children in school that expected more for our children. I am also a member of an organization that gives out scholarships to kids that are in lower income families. And the sad thing that I really come across is a lot of times when we give out these scholarships, these parents don't know how to do grants for their children, don't know how to fill out papers for the scholarships. These are things that are missing in the schools, or should I say ignored. A lot of the kids are not helped to do these things. So these kids get passed by. So as well as you having a plan to educate them, have a plan to keep them going. In other words, don't make this beautiful flower and don't have a way to continue the beauty. Everybody's not going to go to college. Everybody's not college material. But we do have to have, to me, we can give them a good way of life. And that means there's vocational. There's some vocational people out there who makes more money than 4-year, 5-year, 6-year degrees. So there's more than one way to look at this. And these are things you need to think about. And one of them is like, well, in our transportation, we have mechanics, master mechanics. You can make $30, $40, $50-some thousand a year. That's not no little bit of money to some people. That's a good, decent living. So these are things you can look at. But I want us to get fairness in transportation. And that's my biggest thing. Being very fair and being very firm. There are jobs where the equity is not there in transportation. I mean, we have people of color who has the credentials, but we feel was looked over. Think about this. This is something that we're going to talk about at another time. I appreciate you all listening. There's a lot more I need to say, but I'm hungry and I'm tired. Good evening, Mr. Chair, and to all of you all who are serving, Diane McGraw, President of 4A's PAC. And I want to applaud Ms. Freeman and her committee's efforts. However, as you all know, I'm a big advocate. Can you not hear me? My voice is a little scratchy. Can you hear me now? And I was saying I want to applaud Ms. Freeman and her committee's efforts. However, when we talk about equity, I think a big piece that continues to be missed, the guidance counselors. Guidance counselors are going not just to teachers, not just she said, the parents. We have to catch these children early. VPK, all the way up. If you don't, you're building a foundation in the equity. Talk about equity? You just had some children. I'm going to give you an example because parents call me all the time. Because Dr. McNeely knows I go to any school, I advocate for any child, black, white, green, or purple, when it's not right. Had a young lady who just graduated. She graduated, but she didn't have enough core courses to go on to a 4-year to play ball. But she ended up at the JUCO because you have, unfortunately, you have people in our school system telling children, oh, you don't really need 2 years of Spanish. You just need one because you probably just going to go to JUCO. We shouldn't be doing this to children. So when they graduate, the hope goes away. That's why you have all of this crime. These children are all over town. I saw kids and I'm just, as I walk, I'm disappointed. What happened? You graduated with a 3.5. You graduated with 4.0. But because of the unfairness that continues to go on in our community, and I say it every time, children of the corn is happening. The children, as she said, discipline out of control, but I guarantee if you identify those children early and say, you know what, they will fit best in a vocational Prairie View. Mr. Hyde, I heard you say we got some money. Prairie View, set it up. When I say that, I don't want you to come back. What I'm saying is you said we're going to find some way to support Mr. Purvis and make sure we can put resources in place. We need resources in place. Take A. Quinn from the custodian on up. That would be the team. Turn A. Quinn into a vocational school. Take Prairie View. Build some private partnerships. Turn it into vocational schools. If you do that, Ms. Pearl wouldn't have to be fighting some of these children. Because guess what? They're going to begin to feel successful because they may not be algebra, honors, but they can make good mechanics and everything else when it comes to vocational. So I hope as we move forward, don't see us and some of us as enemies, but we're here to help. Hawthorne, I helped do an incentive program. If the children come to school, I gave Google cards, McDonald's cards. I donated. Because I care. Because I care. But we need more people inside as well to care. Because I can tell you, in the system, it's very intimidating sometimes when you come in as a parent. And then I'm called to go with people. I go to meetings and I don't even know the people. But what I'm saying to you as we move forward, she's going to need help. Her team is going to need help. And you're going to need help because it's time to change. Some of you all respect you as people, but you've been here 20 years. And things have been the same. Thank you for your time.
Hi. My name is Shannon Bloodworth. I am one of Sunshine's parents. One of the ones that could afford to send my child to see Sunshine. I'm one of the parents that had to find my way through what's called dyslexia. 1 in 5 children has dyslexia. It is considered a disability. I call it a learning difference. Kids have a hard time learning to read. But if they are taught the way that they learn, they can learn to read the way that the neurons are developed in their brains, the way that their brain is developed if they're taught that way. I tried to get my child a 504. I was told that my child did not qualify for a 504. I asked for that in writing. It was not provided to me. I contacted the district. The district kind of floated me around because my child was at a charter school in Alachua County. But a charter school falls under you. I ended up contacting the Department of Education in Florida, was sent back to someone here. Brian actually knows me. He may not recognize me now. My hair was a different color then. But all in all, we ended up with 5 attorneys in my child's IEP meeting because Disability Rights Florida came and represented us and said, Alachua County is known for breaking the law for children with disabilities. You are known in the state of Florida for breaking the law when it comes to children for disabilities. I wrote off $24,000 on my taxes last year because I paid out of pocket for my child to get the services that she needed because Alachua County could not provide it. I paid a teacher out at Rawlings Elementary who is amazing, that has to find out from year to year whether she is going to have a job, if there's going to be enough students for her to help. Are you kidding me? 1 in 5 children has dyslexia. And you're going to tell me that she may not have a job because she's not going to have enough students to help? Yale Research Center, Dyslexia Center, has a 99-cent test per child that you can give to a child at 5 years old to identify if they are at risk. Why are our children not worth 99 cents?
Anyone else?
Take my gum out of my mouth. Hi guys, I'm going to speak a little loud so this thing can hear me. I'm here representing myself. I'm Jana Reichert from Transportation. I'm also a mom, and I'm also an observer. As a mom, I have 4 kids that have gone through, 1 I have graduated, thank God. I have 3 more that are going through the education system. I have 1 with a 504 plan. I have 1 who was skipping school last year. Yeah, she got referrals for it and everything. Did I know? Hell no. Did I get a phone call? Absolutely not. I applied for a zoning exemption, like I have for the 7 years I've been with transportation, so that my kids could ride on the bus with me to school. Because that's a kind of a perk for me to be able to transport my kids to and from and make sure I know that they're getting home and doing what they're supposed to do every day. I couldn't get that zoning exemption because they told me, and I was so surprised. I was like, what do you mean you can't get a zoning exemption? Since when? What? Well, she has 97 absences and tardies. Whoa! What do you mean my kid had 97 absences and tardies? I didn't get a phone call. Then my 20-year-old, who has already been through the system, informed me, hey mom, I can log on and change your number. What? You know how to do that? These kids are smart. Okay? These kids are beyond smart, like, whew, over my head. I didn't think they knew this stuff like that. She's not even like an IT tech whiz or anything, but she knows how to do it. Why? Because she's got friends that know how to do it. So there's some things in this system, in this county, that we need to look at because these kids know the loopholes that we don't. Now, as an observer, I observe parents, I observe children, I observe teachers. I see them every day when I'm going to and from school. I interact with my parents for my kids on my bus. I beg them, come to me. If you've got a problem, go ahead, come to me first. That's fine. I will gladly discuss it with you. I have parents that, there's kids on my bus that they do the same repetitive, not okay, breaking the rules thing over and over and over again. And I talk to their parents, and their parents are like, yeah, okay. And I talk to the administrators, and the administrator's like, oh, that's really serious. We need to, this has happened 5 times. We need to take care of this. And they're talking about suspensions and this and that and the other thing. I don't want that child suspended off my bus. Curse me for saying it. I want that child to go to school. I want that child to have a chance. I don't care where that child comes from. I pick up kids from Westchester. Westchester, hey! I pick up kids from Hampton Court. Or Pine Ridge, as it's known a little more popularly in that area. They ride the same bus. Oh yeah, sure. I tie it up some. Okay. There's parents that don't care, there's parents that do care. So on that point, we need to get parents involved. We need to get them involved. We need to reach out to them. We need to knock on some doors. I love what you're doing. I love your plan. I love your idea. Yes, we need to expand on it. We need to knock on doors. As a bus driver, we need more support. This is my last point. I'm wrapping it up. As a bus driver, we need more support. Support, not only from you guys, not only from everybody in this room, from parents. We need support for each other. We've been, in the 7 years I've been working here, we've been battling each other more and more as co-workers. There's been a lot. I'm tying it up.
Yeah, but you're saying the same.
Okay. I'm not saying the same stuff. Thank you. We need to get it together. We really do. We got to get it together. I like this plan. It's a great start. But let's get it together and let's get some more involvement. Let's get some more help. My very, very, very last point. I'm sorry. I swear to God. I don't know how much money y'all make a year, but I bet one income in your household is enough to pay for everything and then some. And you take vacations. I made 19 grand. 19? I got 4 kids, y'all. We need to think about that. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much. Have a good day. My name is Megan Moore. I missed the first 30 minutes of the meeting of the presentation because I was at home eating dinner with my kids and my husband. So I don't know if this was mentioned or addressed. So my husband is black and we have 3 sons, and our oldest just finished at Howard Bishop Middle School. And one of the first things we noticed at Bishop was the separation between mainstream and magnet. It's apparent from day one. The kids are aware of it. The kids are aware that there's conflict between mainstream teachers and magnet teachers. I was told that magnet even has their own mascot. I was talking to a friend who teaches elementary school at I believe it's Williams, and she was telling me that the magnet program there, the kids play on a different playground, that they have a different lunchtime. So a thought, and I don't know if this is true, but a thought I had was maybe that's a starting point for the equity issue, is to stop doing these policies where we're separating the magnet kids from the mainstream kids. And then maybe the kids will feel more comfortable and not feel alone because they're already mingling with the kids. Yeah, so I agree with what's been said about the meetings. We live in East Gainesville, so I drive by, so I see it on the board, but that's the only way I know when the meetings are. I think it would be great if it could be sent home from the schools. Yeah, I just think it almost, I've mentioned to my husband that it almost seems like you guys don't want the word out, because it just doesn't seem like it's advertised other than on the board. So if you're not driving down East Gainesville, you're not going to see it on the board. So thank you for your time.
Hi, I'm Carly Simon. I was Carly Poston. I grew up here, born and raised, but I am now Carly Simon. You'll never forget it. It works out well. I am a native of Gainesville, but I've spent the last 8 years in Cincinnati as faculty for educational leadership. I train teachers to become principals. My area of research is actually education finance. You can't talk about equity without talking about money. What I am hearing, because like I said, I have just come back about 6 months ago, is there is, in this meeting specifically, it's been addressed communication, community involvement, parent involvement. I did quite a bit of work with CPS, Cincinnati Public Schools, regarding these community leadership programs and an infrastructure to make sure that this happens, because it does sound like that there is a lot of communication that is falling apart. This is an institutional problem, probably at every single institution, so this isn't something new. But I would propose that actually a goal for the equity plan is to design and build and implement a robust community and parent engagement committee system with different levels, where you can have school level leadership on up into the district. This would also aid with communication. In addition to that, I think it is incredibly important to have specific training for parents for education leadership, so they can also become advocates for their child, for their school, and hopefully for this district as they go into Tallahassee, because some of the problems that we're talking about can't be really solved at this level. I'd love to be involved, so if you need anything, please let me know. But again, I appreciate what you are all doing. It takes a lot of work and some very complicated and difficult conversations, and so thank you.
My name is Rod McNeely, teacher in Alachua County. Thank you, Mr. Chair, board members, and Madam Superintendent for allowing us to speak tonight. I have, this is my 20th year in the field this year, and I'm very happy. I have my first educator and two other educators sitting on the dais tonight. And I just wanted to allude to what school board member Griffin said earlier. And first of all, Ms. Freeman, that was awesome. And you did it wonderful. And I'm part at GHS of one of the programs that they're implementing, the AVID program, and I'm real excited about it. First day, 2 days of school, kids are excited about it. So it's going well so far, and we hope to keep it going and keep the momentum rolling. But attitudes of teachers, I've been talking to some of my colleagues about this, and school board member Griffin alluded to it earlier. The attitude of the teacher has to change, and even including myself. And being a black male, I'm responsible for the achievement gap as well, being in the classroom. And the teachers have to move from the students can't to students can. And that goes for all students, from the highest to the lowest. That's the only way we're going to shrink the achievement gap in the classroom. Students can't to students can. And that's what I've been trying to motivate my students with the first 2 days of school so far. Telling them how intelligent they are with Hey Black Child. Telling them how intelligent they are. Telling them that you can do this. You might not feel like doing it. You may not want to do it, but you can do it. In saying all this, the majority of my students are African American, but I teach all students. My question is, I teach at Gainesville High School, and I feel like Gainesville High School is the top, even though maybe the numbers don't state it, but I think it's the top high school in the district, not only because it's where I work, it's also where I graduated from. But, stop it. But anyway, the attitude of the teacher has to change. Also, I teach a majority of African American students, but I teach all students in general. But what I haven't seen, and this has to be equitable, and this is not just in Alachua County, this is in Hillsborough County, Orange County, and Alachua County. These are other counties that I've taught in. Rarely do I see an African American instructor teaching the majority of white students. I think this has to do with equity as well, you know. And I know the mindset of a lot of parents and families have to change to allow that, you know, for their child to be placed in not just a black educator's class, but a black male educator's class, you know. We can go, and I bet you if you look at the magnet programs and all these schools, We are talking about a shortage of teachers and a shortage of teachers of color, because I agree with Dr. Houchin on that. Minority, I've stopped saying it in my classroom. It's a negative connotation to refer to fewer amounts of people as minorities. I'm sorry. Last little bit. We need to address that situation. Allowing black educators to educate white students, okay? To educate white students, much less giving African Americans the opportunity to go into these various programs and rigorous coursework. But we have to give African American teachers the responsibility of educating white students. Okay, and the last but not least, on attitudes, there are 3 types of people. And Dr. Kendi wrote a book called Stamped from the Beginning. There are anti-racists, there are assimilationists, and there are straight up racists. And assimilationists are people that tell people that, you know, we believe in equity, we believe in equality, but it's something wrong with you. You have to change something about yourself to fit in with everybody else. But one point that Dr. Kendi made in that book, he said, it's nothing wrong with black people, and it's nothing extraordinary about white people. That's all I have to say.
Good evening. My name is Voquivia Simmons, and I'm actually here because my pastor sent me here, Dr. Marie Harris, and I'm glad she did. This is my first time at a school board meeting. I am a retired paraprofessional. I retired in 2015 after 42 years of working with the school system. And in that time, I have seen a lot of changes. And the one thing I'm gonna talk about now, and I need to get on somebody's committee, because I don't really know the committees, but I need to be on someone's committee. But one thing I want to talk about today are school uniforms. I know it's too late for this year, but I worked at Horizon, was my last school. There were kids that didn't wear a belt to school, and because they didn't wear a belt, they were in school suspension. Their pants was up, but they didn't have a belt. There's kids who don't have my thing about the uniforms, I don't want kids to be punished for something that they're not responsible for. And I know that that happens in a lot of homes. A lot of kids' clothes are not clean. You know, they might you can go to Walmart and get a shirt for $2, but you can't go to Walmart and get a school shirt for $2. So the one thing I'm asking is that the school board would actually think about changing, and especially the punishment for kids not having uniforms, having on a uniform. But, ma'am?
At certain schools.
Yeah, at certain schools, yeah, because I understand that Williams has them this year. So,
Williams, Rollins.
yeah.
Anybody else?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, board members. My name is Ann Katurba, and I also would like to commend Mrs. Freeman for her passionate presentation. We have had long conversations, sometimes in parking lots, and I've always appreciated our dialogue, so congratulations on that. I too, however, believe that this is only a start. That what Dr. Houchin talked about with parent community involvement has got to be a key part of this, otherwise this isn't going to happen. I know from our ACEs in Motion program, and I will put a plug in for out-of-school time providers, because no one has actually mentioned that tonight. And I don't think it appeared in your document either. We can be partners with you all. We're not just all babysitters. We are youth development programs that can help you a lot. And I don't want to be dismissed as not important, because we are. We provide mentorship, we provide tutoring, our little pilot program, I think some of you have come to visit, provides, we are working together. We're trying to have a model of how the school district and our after-school program can work together to address these equity issues. We're successful in some things, we're going to be honest and say we're not in others, and we're asking the school district and UF for help with that. So please consider the out-of-school time providers as an important partner in this faith-based organizations. There's so many people that are doing tutoring, but we're isolated. We need to have a cohesive group that works with the school district for the benefit of all children. And I will have to say that I do, again, appreciate the effort, but I do agree with Dr. Houchin that there needs to be an oversight committee composed of community and parents to be involved in this as well. Thank you very much.
I'm Sue Legg from the League of Women Voters. I just wanted to say that the League, the PTA Council, University of Florida Student Council, and the Education Foundation is planning to further the discussion on school culture. What does it mean to provide the kind of culture that we're talking about tonight? And our superintendent will be in attendance, as will Valerie Freeman and others, September 22nd at GHS at 9 a.m. Thank you.
Anybody else? Is that 9 a.m. on Saturday?
It's 9 a.m. and it's on a Saturday morning, so y'all come.
Good evening. I'm Gwendolyn Zahara Simmons, and I teach at the University of Florida in African American Studies and Religion. I want to also thank Miss Valerie Freeman and all of those who have worked with you on creating this plan. It's been my pleasure to be at several meetings with you, and I know how hard you have been working along with your team. I just wanted to say that I think, and I'm not clear if the plan for the board is whether or not you are thinking to adopt this tonight. If that is the case, it's not. Okay, because I think that it would be very important to have community involvement before you adopt this, so that you can have more input, that we can read this plan. It's 111 pages. It will take some time to digest, and then we would be able, I hope, to give written comments and to have another meeting. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, no, you go. Okay, thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank all of the citizens for every comment that you gave us tonight. It matters not what your interest might have been, but that you came, that you spoke, and that even the chair said we could go much further and longer. And I was disappointed to see no one get back up, because I think it's so important if we are really going to do the work that Mrs. Freeman said that we are challenged to do. I see Mr. Fletcher, he said nothing. I can't believe it. But if we're going to do this work together, then we have to talk and speak, disagree if we have to, but come back and unify for the best thing that we can do for our children. And then we have to think about our employees. But the children are always going to be first. And so I thank you from the bottom of my heart tonight for coming to the mic. There are people who sat here and listened as long as we have. I'm surprised, and you had no water. We have water. I'm surprised that you did not come to the mic, because this was your time. I'm hearing from several persons that did speak that you think that this is a great start. I commend you for saying that. It is a great start, but we have much, much further to go. So that means the chair and the superintendent will get together and discuss those possibilities. And we will certainly, I know Mrs. Johnson was probably taking notes. We're going to put it everywhere, not only on the board, not only on our website, not only in the Sun, not only on Facebook, not only on Snapchat, whatever those things are. We are going to do it so that members of the community will not be able to come at all and say, we may even do the old-fashioned, half of the district will be making calls. I know Mrs. Johnson puts that robot thing on certain numbers. I don't know how that happens, but we have that too. So maybe we didn't do that for this meeting, but from here on out, we will do that. One of the things I really am interested, one of our citizens said about the para training. I think that is important, very much so, because we cannot just train instructional staff, but the paras who work hand in hand with us must have the training. Our wonderful people from transportation, you know how much I love you, and you know how much I'm going to stick with you and the assistant superintendent, Paul White. We are going to get this right, and I am glad that we've hired a person that we are going to see and help him understand our needs. I started off tonight by stating that we must have citizen input, just like we do with the 1 mil. We are going to have to formulate the same thing, the same process with this equity plan. I think we were all in agreement with that. Some of our speakers were very passionate, but even if you didn't get a rouse from this group, it does not mean that your comments were any less. I will look at the video like Dr. Paulson does. He loves that, looks and takes notes. I will go back tomorrow, take a look at everything that was stated tonight, and have my discussion with the superintendent, because as you know, we meet every other week with her, and sometimes more frequently. So she has a long couple of sheets she's written. I have mine. Dr. Legg, I appreciate you continuing this conversation with your committee. That is my son's birthday, but he will have to wait. I am going to come on Saturday at GHS, the 22nd, at 9 o'clock to continue this conversation. As Dr. Paulson said at the beginning of the meeting, this whole idea stemmed a couple of years ago from the United Church of Gainesville. We have done some things that I'm very proud of since that time. I am hoping, though, that when you get the plan all bound like this, that it's not going to be put on a shelf and dust will collect. We must do what the committee has written, and Dr. Wolf is gone. And I'm very much I'm going to have to say something to her tomorrow, because I know last year she worked closely with Mrs. Freeman, and I don't think we acknowledged her at all, so I will do that tomorrow. But we are going to have a great plan because we are in it. I love Mayor Surrency when he says we are all in. We have got to be all in, and we'll come up with our own hashtag. I don't know, some of you smart people can do that. My final thought, I want everyone to understand that this is a pre-K to 12th grade district. Sometimes we don't think in that manner. We think K to 12. But we are pre-K to 12 if we really mean equity. And so I'm hoping that all of us will come together, especially curriculum, especially Head Start, especially early development people, and craft this plan that will meet those children and uplift them as well. There's more to be done. If we can get the pre-K infused and embedded in this plan, we will even have a higher graduation rate when it comes to 28, when they finish high school. I'm just saying that sometimes we don't include them in the planning and the training. And I'm not just talking about the director of Head Start, but I'm speaking in terms of the instructional and going back to the para. And Mr. Freeman, whether you nod your head or not, you know we need to include pre-K in everything that we do. And it's not a separate entity. It is inclusive of everything that we should. Dr. Calhoun, I see you sitting out there and you didn't come to the mic, but at least you were here. And I appreciate seeing you here from Santa Fe College. We have a lot to do together. We have a lot. And finally, she's not looking at me, but from the University of Florida representative here, Mrs. Florida Bridgewater Alford, I'm surprised that you are not at that mic to take back to Dr. Fox tomorrow what's been going on in this boardroom. Oh, yes, thank you. Dr. DeJong, thank you too for being here, because we expect great things from the collaborative efforts we are going to do together. Would you take back to your department as well? Thank you. That's all I have to say at this time. I was trying to make it at least to 9:30, but I didn't quite get there. So, Mr. Chair, thank you for tonight. Thank you, Mrs. Clark, our superintendent. Thank you, Mrs. Jones, our deputy superintendent. Thank you, Mr. Rella. I plan to have a meeting with you as soon as possible, and I'm giving you that heads up because I know we have a lot of money in our general revenue because of some things I found out from some research, and I will be coming to you for that. Mr. Purvis, welcome aboard. We thank you. I don't see Mr. White. Oh, he's there? Oh, yes. Thank you, Mr. White. And to my colleagues up here, thank you for being so patient tonight, because we had a lot to take in and to now go back and reflect. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Williams. I couldn't hear you.
You said you found some money in the general fund?
I didn't find it. We discovered it.
Oh, so is it enough to hire maybe 2 assistants for Valerie Freeman?
I think we hired one a couple of weeks ago, Miss Mosley. Raise your hand, Miss Mosley.
Okay, so she probably needs one more then.
One more.
Ms. Mosley's in Dr. Wolf still. She was going to onboarding so she's still.
All right, Miss Williams, I was just informed by the superintendent that we do have 2 people on staff with Mrs. Freeman. Dr. Wolf will be continuing her work through with the cultural responsive teaching, and so we have 2 people, but Mrs. Freeman will probably hug you next. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Paulson.
You need worried about pre-K or anything. Don't forget the $500,000 for the Children's Trust. Okay? I know maybe I'm not supposed to do that, but we need to make sure that that gets passed. So anyway, nothing else? Well,
I
that's it.
thought Ms. Wise raised her hand.
Who? Miss Wise?
Wise. Jennifer.
All right. This meeting's adjourned.